That's such a terrible idea.
Yes, it's a terrible idea.
But there's a lot of women that I'm friends with that I've never had any sexual interest at all. And we look at each other in the eye.
That's what you say, but you're a potential rapist. And you're a manifestation. Right. Yes, you get the whole picture. Right? Yes, you get the whole picture. So if you have a discussion, you say, look, what are the rules governing sexual behavior in the workplace? Okay, can you come to work in a negligee? No. How about boxers if you're a man? No. Okay, so there's some...
What about a short skirt?
Well, this is the thing. The devil's in the bloody details, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, you can't come to work naked. You can't come to work in boxer shorts. You can come to work in a suit. Okay, so the line is somewhere between boxers and suit. Exactly is the line. Exactly. Can a man wear shorts?
Well, I wore basketball shorts, and apparently, because they were too loose, when I would put my leg up on the chair, it would expose too much of my upper leg, and I was a distraction to the other employees.
That's why you wear it, and the uniform is the suit, and it's a derivation of military garb. And so the idea was, well, we want to get rid of excess diversity, right, in clothing. Wear your damn suit. Then we know you're playing the game. You don't have to be distracted by what you're wearing. Okay, so that's what men did. Okay, so now women come into the workspace. It's like, what do they do? Well, there's business professional dress, right? And there's some rules around that. But what are the rules exactly? Exactly. And I was thinking, well, we're worried about sexual misbehavior in the workplace. You can't look at someone.
If I can see the bottom of your ass cheeks.
Okay. What about makeup? Do we have a discussion about makeup? Oh, well, no, we can't have a discussion about that. It's like, well, is makeup sexual signaling? It's like, well, if you're an evolutionary biologist, the question is makeup sexual signaling? That's not even a question. Well, obviously that's what it is.
That's why that conversation was frustrating, because he was saying, because they want to do it, they want to wear it, they want to look good.
Well, and maybe
what does that even mean?
Well, that's right. Right. That's right. What does that mean? But he wouldn't think, well, everyone knows what that means.
Well, no, he has to say that. No, he has to say that because in his tribe, you have to communicate that way.
Well, he also thinks he knew. Women wear makeup because they want to look good.
But do you think he's doing that because that's
confident?
His take, or
I use it to cover up my spots.
Getting riled up right now.
Both.
As a journalist, it's kind of his idea or his job to challenge you in some way, and at the very least, offer the devil's advocate opinion.
Sure.
No, I don't agree with this devil's advocate opinion.
They just want to look good. You need to explain yourself better. Why are you saying?
Oh yeah, but the way he did it was like, oh, Dr. Peterson, it's obvious what it means for them to look good. Like everyone knows that.
Do you think that he felt like perhaps that he was intellectually sparring with you and he was being aggressive about it?
I think he felt that. I think he felt that it was necessary to challenge me, that was his role as a journalist. But fundamentally, he was smug. He thought he came at the entire conversation with an air of intellectual condescension. It was built right into the discussion right from the beginning. He never dropped it at all. It's like, well, I know what you're doing, and I know what's up, and I know how to take you apart. And I know that whatever you're talking about is just an attempt to defend your
actually reprehensible
opinions. Oh, God, about an hour? Something like that.
How much did they use?
Oh, in the clips, hardly any of it. I don't even know, a couple of minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah, so your tendency to get riled up can be exploited.
Yes, of course. And it's the problem of deviating from the doctrine of minimal necessary force. Like the best interactions I've had with contentious journalists is where I've absolutely kept my cool, you know. But and
like Captain Newman.
Yes, exactly. And
so what you're saying is,
well, that's what he was like.
Yeah,
it's like I know who you are, and I know you're covering it up. It's like,
well, it's these concepts. These are complex situations when you find men and women who are sexually attracted to each other and they're working in confined environments for long periods of time, and they essentially spend more time with the people they work with than they do with their lovers and their wives and their husbands. And it's weird, you know. Men and women interacting with each other in closed-in boxes is weird. That's what an office is. It's a closed-in box. We're all together, and if they find each other attractive and they're interacting with each other socially, especially if there's any interaction that deviates outside of the work discussion.
Well, you also don't want them to find each other unattractive.
Right.
Like if you're taking someone out for dinner, on a business dinner, it's like even if it's guys going out together, let's say, it's not like they're working to find each other unattractive. And I don't mean sexually. You want to manifest yourself as
You want to
attractive.
enjoy each other's company.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
And you want to be charismatic and you want to be witty and all of those things. And that shades, especially when you add, assuming a heterosexual environment, you add a heterosexual component to that, the borders become fuzzy. And so I was talking about border conditions. You
Yes.
said, well, if we're going to have a conversation about this, let's talk about the border conditions. Oh, no, we can't do that. It's like, well, I thought that's the discussion you guys wanted.
Why do you continue to agree to have these conversations that will be edited?
Oh, well, that's a good question.
The Jim Jeffries one was another one.
Yeah.
Jim's a friend of mine. But I mean, he gave you a good question, and you actually gave a good answer. You said, actually, I'm probably wrong about that.
Yeah.
When you were talking about whether or not gay people whether someone should be forced to bake a cake for gay people.
Yeah.
And you said forced to, probably not. And he said, well, what if they don't want to bake a cake for black people?
Yeah.
And he said, well, actually, they probably should be forced to.
Yeah, well,
I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, well, I was probably wrong in everything I did in that part of the discussion because I hadn't thought that issue through enough to actually give a good answer.
You didn't expect that issue because this is not something you talk about commonly.
No, and it's actually complicated, right? I mean, obviously, the whole "I won't serve you because you're black" thing is not good. But then again, you also have the right to choose who you're going to affiliate with. But then that's complicated because it's a commercial circumstance. And then if you're making a cake, is that the same as serving or is that compelled speech? It's like, oh my God, these are border cases that cause a lot of controversy. I don't mean serving black people. Obviously, that's not a border case. But these cases that cause a lot of controversy is where two principles are at odds, and it isn't exactly clear where to draw the line. And I'm not happy with my answer to that, but I hadn't spent the week it would take to think through the issue and really have a comprehensive perspective.
The fuck? Oh. It's amazing.
The word
want to hear is that he apologized on behalf of the Catholic Church as a whole.
It can't just be a spectacle. It has to be
That's
something
exactly what it was.
positive.
It was a spectacle. It was a fucking publicity stunt. It was.
It doesn't matter what he does, because I'm on my healing journey already, and I don't need him to apologize to heal.
I call it ethnic cleansing. If you went the same thing I went through, that's not how what you would printed.
I've spoken many times about the importance of concrete action, not just beautiful words.
I myself have been very triggered by this week, and you saw an exponential increase in calls to the National Indian Residential School helpline.
If we're true to our word in terms of healing and reconciliation, we're going to have to be able to forgive.
I am deeply sorry. Sorry for the ways in which, regrettably, many Christians supported the colonizing mentality of the powers that oppressed the indigenous peoples.
I wanted to hear
The word genocide.
on behalf of the Catholic Church.
Yep.
I apologize.
Yep. That's it.
for
That's it.
residential
That's
schools
it.
And for all of the atrocities that happened.
Yep.
And I didn't hear that.
No, you did not.
There's no mention in his apology of releasing the documents that we desperately need. These documents hold where these lost souls were buried.
On that red banner are the names, and sometimes just the nicknames, of the children who died.
An important part of this process will be to conduct a serious investigation into the facts of what took place in the past and to assist the survivors of the residential schools to experience healing from the traumas they suffered.
I mean, he also didn't address a couple of key issues. One of them being the doctrine of discovery.
It's a series of formal statements from the Pope that go back to the 1400s, and they empowered Christian colonial expansion, saying any land discovered by colonists could be claimed as their own. For decades, indigenous communities have called for the Pope to revoke that doctrine, saying it influenced the creation of residential schools.
Without the renouncement of the doctrine of discovery, we're locked in a colonial system, and we need to repudiate that so we can get on with the healing. Most importantly, our sovereignty and our self-determination for our people. The Pope didn't say it; he needed to say it, and he failed.
The Pope was given a traditional headdress to wear by the Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner who invited him.
But that is also something that is often reserved, I think, for people who have acted very honorably.
It was disappointing to see it, and for them to do that and gift him this sacred item was kind of disappointing.
This little child followed his protocols here. He went to the elders, he went to the leadership, and requested permission to present that gift.
An unscripted moment, a ballad to the land and the village, sung to the tune of O Canada in Cree by Sipiko, an Indigenous woman from northern Manitoba. She hadn't planned to speak, but says she had to when the Pope put on a headdress over his skull cap, to her a sign of disrespect.
You are hereby served spoken law. We, the daughters of the Great Spirit, and our tribal sovereign members cannot be forced into any law, any treaty that is not the great law. We have appointed chiefs on our territories. Govern yourselves accordingly. Hi does not mean thank you. It means that I have nothing more to say.
This is just the beginning, again, of a reconciliation.
Do we talk to our elders and take time to listen to them?
The Pope's traditional Mass, including some Latin,
did not address Indigenous cultures or traditions.
For an Indigenous person and a priest, this Mass was a missed opportunity of the celebration of Indigenous spiritual ways.
There was so much talk of our elders, of our grandparents, of our families, but our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our families went to residential school.
All this was.
Our spirituality has not been protected. It was taken.
He did speak about the future and the need to build a new future together.
A future in which the history of violence and marginalization suffered by our Indigenous brothers and sisters is never repeated.
Never.
July 26th marks the feast of St. Anne. She's considered to be the grandmother of Jesus. Indigenous culture places strong importance on the grandmother figure.
The reason why I came is to celebrate this event with all the rest of my brothers and sisters in Indigenous country. This is a long time coming, and we waited for many, many years for this to happen.
Dear Indigenous brothers and sisters, I have come here as a pilgrim also to say to you how precious you are to me and to the Church.
I think we need to hear this over and over again, that we matter, that our presence in the Church is not a detriment, but a real blessing.
Part of the painful legacy we are now confronting stems from the fact that Indigenous grandmothers were prevented from passing on the faith in their own language and culture.
To speak about sort of grandmothers and mothers and their important role in the family, and this is true, but without paying attention to the context that the colonial system, the Catholic education system of residential schools, actually broke those families apart.
Francis again apologized to Indigenous peoples, carefully blaming the horrors of residential schools on governments and local Catholic institutions, not the Church itself.
I express my deep shame and sorrow, and together with the bishops of this country, I renew my request for forgiveness for the wrong done by so many Christians to the Indigenous peoples.
A group of people inside the church at today's Mass in Quebec sent Pope Francis a clear message. They held up a large sign and it reads, "Rescind the doctrine."
The biggest surprise for me after this banner drop was the amount of people who came and asked what the doctrine of discovery was. And so just that questioning is proof that our work is so far from done.
We can do little more than cling to our sense of failure and ask, what happened? Why did it happen?
Honestly, this seems like more of the same. You know, we've been hearing this message over and over again, but it's hollow. We know what happened. Indigenous people have lived what has happened here.
And they've been told that they've
During
been
Vesper
collectively
service
lying.
in the Notre-Dame de Quebec
Basilica Cathedral.
That this is like
Francis
potentially
acknowledged
made up.
past sexual abuse
Potentially
by
made up
members of the Roman Catholic
like
Church
this whole
in this
time.
country.
I think in particular of the sexual abuse against minors and vulnerable people. Crimes that require firm action and an irreversible commitment.
There are a lot of Indigenous Catholics who were survivors of residential school who never lived to see this day. Many of us are holding spirits of those dead people in our hearts so that they can also receive the healing that they had longed for.
Cultural practices like singing. These are the very things that the residential school system brutally and violently suppressed. To have them front and center when the Pope comes to visit is really meaningful.
Thousands who came out for this historic visit on Inuit Nunangat to hear him say sorry in Inuktitut.
I imagined the suffering. This renewed in me the indignation and the shame that I have felt for months. Today, too, in this place, I want to tell you how very sorry I am and to ask forgiveness for the evil perpetrated by not just a few Catholics in those schools.
It's not the end, this is the beginning of hopefully helping our people to fully recover from the horrific.
The Truth and Reconciliation Commission concluded the schools amounted to cultural genocide, but the Pope never used that word during his trip. But he did on the way back to here in Rome.
Sì, è una parola tecnica, genocidio. Ma io non l'ho usata perché non mi è venuta in mente. Ma ho descritto che è vero, sì, è un genocidio.
What's first up? To watch.
First papal visit and his last stop. I'm Adrienne Arsenault in Iqaluit. The people in this crowd here to see the Pope are survivors and their families from all over the north. They know they don't have much time with them, so they want to be clear. Bring the abusers to justice and take note. The schools tried to kill the culture, and it's still.
Oh, fucking salute. I want to be a fucking hoodlum. Not only do you never rat, you never cooperate. You do not pay off cops. I don't give a shit what anybody says. If you pay off cops, you're a fucking pussy. Like, you're fucking, what, Hell's Angels hanging out at fucking Tim Hortons for your moti. Get the fuck out of here. Like, fucking take a second. Stop and think about what you're doing.
Vibrant colors, music, dance, and of course the celebration of freedom. The Toronto Caribbean Carnival is
I see butts.
after a 2-year break. Now this, of course, is the next in a lineup of major summer events making comebacks right across the country. This one honoring a Caribbean tradition of parading through the street that started in celebration of freedom and emancipation from slavery. And it's observed on what has been recognized by the Canadian government as Emancipation Day weekend. We had an opportunity to speak with the chair of the planning committee earlier. She told us that
she started rolling it up the right one, and then she grabbed one of my grabbers to my phone. So I was like, smoking.
It's been great meeting all the people from out of town. I just met someone from Las Vegas. He said, I flew here specifically for this event. And
okay. Oh. Again?
As we speak, some of them were supposed to travel yesterday for the conference, but they have not received their passports.
The 24th International AIDS Conference, one of the largest globally, is
Wonder
set
if
to
that's gonna
begin
do
later this
monkeypox.
week here in Montreal, but many delegates and attendees from across the world still haven't been able to get their visas to be able to make the trip, leaving many facing the reality that they may not be able to attend.
It's a bittersweet moment for myself.
We last spoke to Tinashe Rakawadzo, part of Y Plus Global, an international organization that promotes the voices of youth living with HIV earlier this month.
I think we are also trying to jump through hoops of fire with our influence and engagement advisor and the events coordinator being denied visas.
Since then, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada announced it would be prioritizing the processing of visa applications for delegates attending the conference, and according to the conference's local co-chair, the amount of delegates that do not have their visas has dropped from 800 to 200, but many are still in limbo.
I've not yet received it. I was supposed to have traveled yesterday. We have also paid accommodation with other colleagues who are also trying to postpone their flights in case they might receive their passports before the end of the conference. But we're also looking at having 2 days that is left to the International AIDS Conference, which is also leaving many people not quite sure on what exactly they should do.
Leading up to the conference, many criticized Canada for bidding to host the event, spending millions on it, without making sure all attendees would be given a visa to be able to attend. An attendee for the conference and founder of the African Alliance for HIV Prevention tweeted, after nearly $20,000 in visa fees, biometric costs, travel back and forth, public fights for visas, and today's refusal by United Airlines for us to board, we are canceling our AIDS conference participation to avoid further loss. Another tweeting, 69% of people with HIV live in Africa. I'm attending AIDS 2022 in Montreal this week with very mixed emotions. Hundreds of delegates from Africa cannot attend due to visa denials. Global health, which excludes important voices from poor countries, cannot be effective. This must change. Many, like Rakawadzo, are now forced to partake virtually.
I'm not going to be there in person, but there are also other young people from Africa, other young people who are living with HIV, other young people who are also affected and most at risk of HIV who are going to be at this conference speaking in sessions, and also we are going to be joining virtually and making use of some other communication platforms to ensure that the voices of young people in all our diversity are also amplified.
In Montreal, Felicia Adam, City News.
Dr. Crowley's coming straight from the underground. Yes.
What about if someone was non-binary?
Come again?
Non-binary, like someone is.
You're not a woman. You're not a man. Saying we have never seen things like this. For a man, he has a penis. For a woman, he has a vagina. So we know this is a lady. This is a man.
That's funny.
One of the things I noticed about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the 2 things that I noticed that I really didn't like. The first is that because I'm a personality psychologist, as a researcher, not as a clinician, but as a researcher, I know the literature on gender differences in personality because it's part of my field. And I could tell that I was starting to have some reluctance to deliver the lecture on gender differences. Now, I didn't stop, but I felt that I was treading on thin ice by delivering those lectures. And I thought, oh, that's not good. Because I'm like a comedian. I'm pretty much willing to say anything that I think is true. And regardless of the consequences in some sense, because I'd rather take the consequences of what's true. And I thought, this isn't good, because if someone like me, who's, rather uncontrollably mouthy, let's say, is starting to have second thoughts about teaching what's a very serious topic and something about which there's a very well-developed science, then how much are other people starting to censor? And at the same time, my students, many of whom were female, were telling me that they were really hesitant to talk about gender differences in any of the courses they were running. And I thought, oh, this is not good. This is seriously not good. And so, and it's certainly the case that my colleagues censor themselves increasingly on campus with regards to the topics they're willing to discuss. And it's subtle, because imagine in a given lecture, I could discuss any of 10 things, and 3 of them are taboo. Well, I just won't discuss those, and that's a kind of invisible censorship. It's not like I'll get up and say, look, I could have talked to you about gender differences in personality, but I won't because I'm afraid. I'll just pick another topic because there's lots of topics to choose from. And that means there's going to be a bunch of topics that are really important because actually the issue of sex differences in personality happens to be really important that people just won't talk about. And the other thing that's so annoying about this is that, especially with regards to sex differences in personality, well, let's say that you're firmly on the side of women, just for the sake of argument. Well, do you admit to or deny the existence of sex differences in personality? What's better for women? Well, the radical leftists basically say, oh, well, if you talk about sex differences, then you're part of the oppressive patriarchy and you're attributing to women a different kind of temperament and to continue the suppression. But I could just as easily say, it's like, well, wait a second. Like, if you want to give the individual the greatest degree of freedom, you say, look, you're different from another person. You're different on the basis of a variety of your characteristics, sex being one of them. That's going to have some effect on what sort of choices you want to make in your life. It's like, go ahead and make whatever choices you want, as far as they're a direct expression of your being. And so if you deny the existence of these sex differences, which no serious commentator in the psychological literature, in the personality domain, and those are the people who know about this thing, nobody debates whether or not sex differences in personality exist, or that they have a biological component. And what's also interesting about that is that none of those people are conservatives. There are no conservative psychological researchers to speak of. They're in a tiny minority. So the people that have done the research indicating that there are differences between the sexes in personality, and that those differences have in part, a biological component, those are liberal and left-leaning people who've drawn those conclusions, despite what their ideological presuppositions might have suggested to them to begin with. So, it's, I don't know what to say about that, except that it's all appalling.
I suppose the fear must be that difference will ultimately be used for leverage for status.
Sure, and that's a reasonable fear, because anything can be manipulated. But claims of identity claims that people are identical in some way can also be used for the same reason. If I insist that everyone is exactly the same on all dimensions, that there's just as much of a totalitarian threat lurking in there as there is the threat lurking that will use differences as an excuse. Yes. And we're also not having a serious discussion about this. It's like, yeah, men are overrepresented at the top of the economic apex. That's true. It's a small minority of men, by the way. It's certainly not men in general, but they're radically underrepresented at the bottom, overrepresented at the bottom. And believe me, man, like, nobody cares about men who are failures. They are like off the bloody radar. So there's no sympathy for men who are failures. So men stack up at the top and the bottom. And we don't have this. Women are radically
Nice, sweet boy.
my passport papers. What's going on with that? Ah. Mm. Oh my god! Huh? Huh? Cool.
What? I'm right here.
I'll pick up some milk, Kate. Okay. Okay, good. See you later then.
Where you going?
Breakfast.
Yeah, Mom.
I have to entertain him for 2 hours.
Why?
Because it's going to be dinner. Karen's go away.
Where'd Sharon go? Vacation?
Who do you hate?
I didn't say I hate anybody.
Do you believe it? Do you believe it? You're the only one that noticed that.
Notice what?
Her keys were on the dash of the car, like on the window of the car.
Whose car?
Her wreck vehicle.
Yeah.
So you got it back?
No. I don't know where they are. I guess they towed it with the car.
Well, I gave Dom the number.
Oh, good.
And I told him to call to see if he can get my keys back.
Oh, thank God. Nobody noticed that. If everybody looked at the picture, not one person said, "Are those car keys?" Not one. Even I didn't notice.
Well,
yeah.
I should have went and looked at it before you guys towed it.
That's the only way. Like the only place we probably didn't look is on the vehicle.
Yeah,
We
but
looked
like, where
in
would
the
my
vehicle.
necklace be too then?
Probably in the vehicle, right?
Keelan, routed you out. You have my camera.
What do you mean?
The red camera, the red Canon.
It's in that room, in your room.
No, that's the one that's on top of that shelf. That is a Polaroid camera.
So where's the other one then?
Keelan said you took it. Keelan said you have it. The red camera. The red Canon. It was in a gray bag. Square like that. Very much similar.
And the one on top is in a gray bag.
No, the one on top is in a black bag.
No, that's my camera that's in a black bag.
Yeah.
The one on top of your cabinet in your room is a gray
That's
bag.
Polaroid. That's been there for years.
It wasn't there because I just moved that shelf and I would have noticed.
It's a Polaroid bag. And I... What?
I showed her money's back, please. Oh, sure, sit in the sun.
I was trying to get some tanning.
Why don't you sit in the back when it's cold?
Because
why?
I like scaring the neighbors.
Yeah, that's great. Your cigarettes will be one later.
I left it inside. You need to get me like a little can. I had one in my car too.
What do you mean a little can?
A little ashtray can. I had like this old vintage one I found, and it was like in a legit leather bag. Like leather, like handmade leather. You're like a sparkle monster.
I'm gonna go and pull see if that'll get rid.
I think my ankle took like the brunt of my accident.
Oh, that's where the floor came up.
Floor came up?
Yeah. The floor. You saw it. That was your car, man. That was the whole car.
Good thing I wasn't driving the fucking Malibu.
You would have been dead.
Oh, definitely. Fuck yeah, I would have been dead. You know what? I've been trying to run that thing into the ground. Like, I've been genuinely trying to kill the crap out of that car.
You're gentle with the truck.
Nobody told me it was a police car. Malibus are police cars. They're heavy-duty tanks. They're like Toyota Camrys, like the old 20 kind of the Camry kind of thing, except heavier duty.
I just realized they have a propane tank on the side of their house. They must
A lot of
heat with
people do.
propane?
A lot of people do. Well, look at their chimney. Their chimney's fake.
You know, I can't see that far.
So that little metal tint thing on top of their chimney.
They blocked it off to
Mhm.
make it propane. Really? Wow. I mean, it's...
That's what across the street does. It's a pain in the ass to get the tank. Like
Someone does
the
it.
yeah, well, across the street from Dom's does it, but like the guy parks like in the middle of the fucking
Said it's
street.
expensive to fill them.
It is. That's what she was saying. The lady across the street.
No more...
I think she
Killed who?
her father. Who? The lady across the street. I think it's her and her brother. because they're very fabulous too. They're very old, like they're older than you, like 20 years older than you, probably at least.
And she killed your father?
He was like 87 or 97 in all fairness, and kind of just like me and him would like sit there staring each other down, and like it's like we're both just like it's like this is like a reflection. No, it's like a reflection. It's like a sad reminder that I'm like an 80-year-old man, and the only people that I actually like really get along with are 80-year-old men. Because I grew up in a truck stop, and they think I'm adorable. Because like but I'm like wearing this little tutu fairy dress, and they are expecting me to be very prim and proper. And then when I start talking like a trucker, they're like, "Oh shit, cool." Dads love me. Dads think I'm hilarious. Did you hear? Did I tell you fucking Dustin's dad had a stroke?
I didn't. You didn't tell me.
John had a stroke,
When?
and he can't talk.
Oh, that's sad.
He's still with it though. Apparently, he has better days than others.
And he's looking much better now.
Yeah. But like, yeah, that's really upsetting. And I would like.
Is he living in the same house?
He just got home. They just let him start going back home. Like they start with the weekend. Nope. I don't think he can walk either.
Oh my god, that's sad, man.
But he's still in there. Like more like he's like more yeah, coherent like than Grandpa was. It's just he can't actually physically do it. So like that must be like hell.
Frustrating living in your own.
That's why he's so angry apparently. Like Dustin's like you don't want to even talk to like you don't want to be around him. I'm telling you, he's not the same. I'm like, trust me. You have no idea how much I understand. Hearing everybody that has ever known my grandfather to be like, what an amazing man. He was such a good man. I was like, if only you knew like what a horrible human being he was inside. Like, and that's what came out after he had a stroke.
Isn't that horrible?
But obviously the war made like seeing his best friend's ship go down, and that was supposed to be a ship that he was on. Of course, it's the only thing that he was a cook, and his glasses kept falling off.
Yeah,
and that's the only thing he ever talked about.
He wasn't the reason his glasses kept falling off because he was a submarine bomber.
Exactly.
He dropped depth charges, and every time they'd go boom, his glasses would fly up the side of the ship.
So like this like crazy thing about the Vietnam vets, the ones that bombed like Hiroshima and shit, they were literally but they had a vow of silence.
Trump never talked about it. He only told me like a couple things.
Their brains were broken, and they were literally like brainwashed into not talking.
Do you remember that vacation we went on with Grandpa to that hotel Cockroaches?
Yeah.
He wanted to go. I think he knew he was dying because we went there to see the house after.
Did we go to Brooklyn or something?
No, it was near Cornwall.
Okay, it wasn't even that far.
There was a place that Grandpa went to after the war because he had a nervous breakdown.
Okay.
And he had to go for peace and quiet, so he stayed there for a month with these people, and he wanted to see the house again. He wanted to so like that should have been some indication.
No, because he was doing the lonely thing where he wanted to find the lady he left for Granny.
Yeah, but that was screwed up too because
and she like either she was dead or she was like I might as well be to you kind of thing. Like
I
she
didn't
had
care
no
about it, but I
interest.
wanted to look for it for Grandpa.
But she didn't.
Called the place. I called the town where she was in. It was called Blackpool, and I called the town, and I kept calling random people. Do you know this lady?
That's how you used to have to do it back in the day. There was no Facebook, or you had to go in a phone book.
And then someone would go, "Oh, well, I might remember. Try this phone
number."
Yeah,
definitely. I missed that honestly. You hear during the Rogers outage, whatever.
Oh, that was bad.
911 was not available.
Oh my god, that's why that guy died. There was a guy that was waiting for an ambulance for 11 hours.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Because 911 was not available. And the reason I know this is because the first time I was homeless and it was in Lachine for some reason, and I just don't understand what tie I have to. I have zero ties to Lachine. So the fact that I've been homeless twice in Lachine and I've ended up at the same church across from the fur trade, like it's just really bizarre to me. Anyway,
the church is pretty awesome.
I had found a phone booth, and I tried doing 5 collect calls, and I found the only person who answered was Katie, and she literally picked up. She said, "I'm in a movie. I'll call you back. Bye." And she hung up on me. I was like, "You fucking asshole!"
Here goes my quarter.
No, I used my card. I used my TD card, and it was like I had $1.25 on it or something like
and
that.
it's a
And
dollar
that
per call,
exactly,
right.
and it was just like I found out that day that if you don't have collect calling on your phone plan, you cannot receive collect calls because it's not a landline. So that was fun to find out. I found that out years ago. So that's why, like, fucking, they were like, well, 311. I'm like, you guys and your fucking 311. That's fucking why I got SPCA that were like camping out waiting for me to walk my dog so they could give me a ticket. Yeah, I didn't tell you about the ticket, the dog off leash, whatever ticket.
No, you told me about that.
Yeah, but like that was another just like one more fucked up thing that happened in Lachine where I'm like, the cops are not present. There's open crime happening all the time.
And then they give you a ticket for walking.
And I'm getting a ticket for walking the dog. Shit does not make sense. It's just so crazy. You people are so backwards. It's just nonsense. Oh. Let's go make some pizza pockets. Ah. Huh? Jacko, come on. Don't you dare fly outside. Stay there, bird. You know how embarrassing this is? Okay. Yeah. Mom, give me a bag of fruit. Okay. juice. Or blue juice, I mean. Oh, ho ho ho. At least Charlie would pull it off as like he accidentally rolled on the top of the couch and like kicked you in the back of the head. And be like, oops, sorry. This little fucking trigger too. Seems to me that it was over. It was great. Oh my god! Really? Lily! Stop crying! Come, child. I feed you cheese. I just don't understand what Sean's crying. Charlie. You know what? Okay. Oh, good catch. Cheese straight. You want to give your sister one too? Oh, I like it. Thanks. Maybe she'll stop crying. Shove food in her face. She's still crying. Is that you crying? Oh, sorry. Oh my god. How are you crying over a cheese string? What? You want to come over here? Come over here. Thank you. Ah. I'm already limping, so. Okay. Kind of like goldfish, actually. I like it. Come. Come on. Come up. Come on. Up, up. Up, up. Come on. Well, you better come.
That truth keeps you from infecting people long before you can ever explain that there are microbes that grow in human shit that are a particular danger to your population. So the point is, would you rather be held back to the place where you can actually describe the literal underpinnings of what's going on, or do you want to be liberated to say something that actually results in an improvement in health before, literally thousands of years before anybody had any idea that it was microbes at the root of this?
Yes, and you need to figure out, so an elaboration of that would be something like human beings needed to figure out how to act without dying before they could understand the nature of the world well enough to justify that.
Right, and you'd be crazy, now that we do have the germ theory disease, to amplify that original crude version of the truth, or that crude approximation of what you need to believe in order to behave safely. There's no reason for that truth to be promoted. In fact, you don't hear people describing this part of the Old Testament anymore.
It's true,
it's
right,
not relevant.
Right. And this is probably all why dietary restrictions were in the Old Testament as well. Shellfish, red tide, eating pigs, trichinosis. There's a lot of issues that go along with that. Yeah,
Right.
well, there is some intermingling, perhaps, of hygienic concerns with also the desire for the groups to distinguish themselves from other groups, right? Because you can unite your group quite tightly by dietary restrictions. So back to your point about terminology, we could do something like fact and wisdom. You say truth, that's the overarching category, and then that divides into fact and wisdom. And what you want optimally is you want the facts and the wisdom to be one to one, but often they're not. And if you find wisdom where the facts aren't laid right out, you don't just get to throw away the wisdom, which is what I think happens in the case of people like Dawkins and Harris. And Harris makes another sleight of hand move, which I don't like, which is that he thinks, so let's say, except for just a second, the wisdom fact distinction, he would say, well, the fact is the thing, and the wisdom is a second order derivation of that. You can ground the wisdom in the fact, and I don't believe that. And I don't think that he has any real justification for that claim. I mean, this is something I never got.
What do you mean by grounding the wisdom in the fact?
He thinks if you know the facts clearly enough, you'll know how to act.
That's not necessarily true.
Well, there's
ways to act that are within your best interest, and then there's ways to act that are within the interest of all the people around you, but might not serve you that well.
Well, there's
and
also
a distinction is where ethics come
right, or where the consequences are delayed for some number of generations.
Sure.
Or something like that.
Yes, well, that's a big problem. And so Sam acts as if the process of mapping facts onto action is simple if we just got the facts right. But it's the weakest part of his argument, and we never ever got to that for a variety of reasons. But part of the reason it's weak is, okay, well, there's like an infinite number of facts, man. So let's say you're standing in front of a field and you're looking at the field. The field does not tell you how to walk through it. There's a million ways through the field. And no matter how many facts about the field you aggregate, you're not going to be able to determine the appropriate path by aggregating those facts. So that's a problem that I don't think Sam is willing to take seriously. And
well, I think there are two problems tangled up here. One of them is there's a question of is one individual supposed to have all of the facts and navigate based on that, sort of the rationality community version of things? Or does, the practical truth is we can't all be experts in everything, and so we have to go along with, guides to our behavior that are approximate, and that's inherent. And then there's a question about civilization. Civilization should be guided by our best understanding of what's actually true, but with an understanding that we don't have a complete map of a lot of stuff. And so I think what you're pointing at is that there is wisdom that has been handed to us that is not such that we can just simply say, oh, here's the nugget at the center of it, and we need to preserve that thing because we don't necessarily know what it's doing. Which is, this is dangerous because some of what it's doing may not be acceptable.
Well, and think about, let's look at the wisdom end of things for a minute. And you alluded a little earlier to like iterations and about the fact that things are iterated across time and that something that works now might fail dreadfully in a month or 2 months. So here's what something has to be like to be wise. Well, first of all, let's say it would be good if it was in accordance with the facts, but we'll leave that aside for now. It has to work, if you operate according to the wisdom principle, whatever it is, it has to work in the world. But it has to work in a world that allows you to maintain your relationships with people in the world. Right? So it's all of a sudden this wisdom thing is something that's not only constrained by, let's call it objective reality, but it's constrained by the necessity of a social contract, a functional social contract. So you're only allowed to put forward actions in the world that would be of benefit to you if they simultaneously don't undermine the structure within which you live. Okay, and then there's a game theory element to that, which is, well, if it's wise, then it works in the world. So that'd be the constraint of objective reality. But then it works for you now, and the you that'll be in a week, and the you that'll be in a month, and it works for you and your family, and it works for you and your family and society, and it works in a way that those things all line up to be iterated across time. And so this is actually also the solution, and I'd really like to hear what you think about this. I think this is the solution to the postmodern conundrum. Because the postmodernists, bless their hearts, so we'll give the devil his due, say, well, the problem is there's an infinite number of interpretations of a finite set of facts. And the right response to that is, that's true. That's true. That's not good. And that's why the postmodernists say, well, you can't agree on a canonical interpretation of a great piece of literature because the number of potential interpretations are infinite. And so then they say, well, why should we settle on any one interpretation then? Why should we privilege one over another? And then they say, well, that's all power games. And so you got to take that seriously. But what they missed, and this is a big deal, it's a big deal, I think, is this idea of ethical constraint. It's like, yes, there's a landscape of potentially infinite interpretations, but hardly any of them will work in the real world. And hardly any of them will work in the real world in a way that doesn't get you killed by other people or doom you because of your own stupidity to failure across time. And so the landscape of interpretation is almost infinite, but the landscape of applicable interpretation, functional interpretation, is unbelievably constrained. And I think that constraint system is what we regard as ethics. It's something like that.
Well, at some level, stories continue through time for a reason. Good stories continue for a long, the Odyssey is with us for some reason. And so there is a scientific reason, or a scientifically investigatable reason why the Odyssey has been durable. We may not know it, but it's in principle a question you could investigate. So I guess at the end of the day, the problem with the postmodernists is that they have a point. The point is perception gets in the way of anything you wish to do objectively. But that point only takes you so far. And
that's why they turn to Marxism, as far as I can tell, because what happens with the postmodernists is they say, oh, there's an infinite number of interpretations. And then the human part of them goes, okay, well, what am I supposed to do next then, since there's an infinite number of choices? And the postmodernist says, well, my theory can't account for that. And then they say, well, back to Marxism. And so that's why I think there's this unholy alliance between the postmodernists and the neo-Marxists. It's because postmodernism is a dead end from the perspective of applicable wisdom. It leaves you bereft and nihilistic. And that's not good, because people can't exist without a purpose. And so they sneak the Marxism through the back door and jump into this power landscape for the reasons that we discussed earlier.
So you really think that it's because of an infinite number of possibilities interpreting things? Because I've always felt that it was really just a response to capitalism. They feel that capitalism is a very negative aspect of our culture and society, and that there's got to be some sort of an alternative. Marxism is a clearly defined alternative that other people have subscribed to in the past. You can point to it. It's a structure that's already set up, and it's romanticized. And I think they adopted for that reason, because it has the socialist aspects attached to it, and they looked at socialism as some sort of a thing that it regards equality and it's some sort of an egalitarian approach.
Well, okay, so we'd have to take two things apart. We'd have to take Marxism / neo-Marxism, Marxism and postmodernism apart. So we could do that historically. And I would say, although there is a reason for postmodernism, which is the reason we just discussed, the landscape, the infinite landscape of interpretation problem. It's a real problem. If you look at it historically, postmodernism actually grew out of Marxism. And so what happened is that the Marxists laid out their theory about the human social environment being composed of a power struggle between the privileged and the underprivileged, right? The rich and the poor in its initial phases. And that's a story that's partially true, and it's got a lot of motive power. The motive power is the romantic motive power that we just described. On the side of the principle, a word for what's right. There's the resentment element, which is that son of a bitch has more than me, so let's cut him off at the knees, which manifested itself brutally in the Soviet Union. And then there's the ideological totality issue, which gives people a sense of security. That took a vicious hit by the late 1960s, because the murderousness of Marxism had been clearly laid out as a doctrine. And that opened the door to this move by mostly French intellectuals to develop the postmodern philosophy, which has these advantages which we described, but also to use that as a screening tactic for allowing Marxism to transform into identity politics. And so, it's hard to disentangle all the motivations that are going on in there, but there's something about it that's truly intellectually pathological, because you don't get to be a postmodernist and a Marxist. You actually technically cannot be both of those things at the same time. And the fact that most people are both of those things at the same time raises the specter of just exactly what their motivation is. And then I would say it's this resentment-driven anti-capitalism. There's reasons to criticize capitalism, obviously, but it's this underground resentment-driven anti-capitalism that I think is one of the fundamental motivators.
Well, if I can add a couple things. The risk of alienating my last few friends.
In for a penny.
Yeah, I guess. So here's the thing. What's up with Marxism is, there's a lot in Marx's critique of capitalism that's actually right. And so that kind of gets you through the door once you start looking at the analysis. And then there's the prescription, which is toxic, but it's not obvious why it's toxic. In other words, it's a pretty good story that doesn't happen to function. And so people gravitate to it because the story is moderately compelling. It's not game theoretically functional or stable or viable, and it does descend into this kind of, inevitable grave violence.
Well, welcome to this talk, Monday the 1st of August. Now, I did wonder if this talk was outside my area of remit, really. But I've thought about it, and I think it's got quite important implications for healthcare and global healthcare, so I want to discuss it. Now, it appears that Pfizer has been guilty of illegal exploitation. Now, this is not something I talk about lightly, and I've got some important reasons that I'll tell you about for talking about it. Now, of course, we have to be very careful here with the evidence. This is mostly coming from this site here from the UK government, from the Competitions and Markets Authority. And we'll be looking at some of the things that has said. Now, let's start off by looking at what this is about. It appears that the NHS has been overcharged for phenytoin sodium. This is a drug called phenytoin. I've given this out, I'm sure I gave this out in the 80s, probably even earlier than that. So it's a long-standing, important anti-epileptic medication.
Okay.
Now, anti-epileptic medications are absolutely vital and completely life-saving for many, many people because they prevent generalized epileptic seizures where there's irregular activity throughout all of the brain in the person, as what we used to call a grand mal fit. Sometimes there's a aura, the patient is aware of something, or sometimes a sensation like a smell or a taste.
Okay.
That warns them they're going to have a fit. That doesn't always happen. Then typically you go into a tonic stage where all the muscles go rigid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really dangerous because you fall over with rigid muscles and you can do terrible injuries to yourself. I remember an appalling case I was at, the person went rigid and they fell back and they hit the head on the supermarket floor, and I was actually involved there briefly, and I felt the back of the patient's head and I could feel the break in the skull. It was really quite disturbing. So that's the tonic phase. Then the clonic phase is the shaking phase.
Yeah.
Or tonic, clonic, then they go into a coma after that, and sometimes there can be a period of post-epileptic confusion or even autism. Or automaticism, where patients do things and don't realise they're doing it. But most patients wake up after the coma and feel pretty groggy. Thankfully, in these generalised seizures, because all of the brain goes into what we call spike and wave activity.
It's 3 minutes and he wasn't breathing.
So even though it looks very distressing for the observer, if you can keep the patient safe during the fit, I would normally put them in some sort of recovery position, just hold the hand and wait for them to recover. Unless they went into stages, in which case more treatment would be required. So just mention that just to say how important this medication is. Pfizer was fined at £63 million, so I don't know what that is in dollars, 80 odd million dollars. I didn't work it out, 63 million English pounds, British pounds. The British group, I believe, Finn charged 6.7 million. NHS costs rose from 2 million a year to 50 million a year in a single year. To me, that sounds like a pretty big increase. If I went to a shop and my pint of beer had gone up from £2 to £50, I would consider that a pretty big increase. So really quite dramatic increase in the year. Now, this is the Competitions and Market Authority, Chief Executive Officer, direct quote.
Yes?
These firms illegally exploited their dominant positions to charge the NHS excessive prices. Make more money for themselves.
2 million to 50 million in a single year.
Now, direct quote from the site.
I don't know if I can make it.
If this is true, then this is completely appalling because this is the lives of men and women, boys and girls we're talking about Finds as the result of an in-depth investigation, Competition and Markets Authority, as we said, Pfizer and Flynn charged unfairly high prices for their capsules. I believe a pack of 100 milligram capsules was up to £67 alone. That's what I believe, it was up to that. Anyway, what's written down here we're pretty confident of. This went on for over 4 years, ultimately paid for by the National Health Service. Now, this is money that could have been used to prevent human pain, suffering and death. The NHS needs money. There's always more to do than can be done. Now, what happened here was firms debranded the drug, previously known as Epinutin, which is what I remember it as. That's what I used to give out very frequently. Meaning it was no longer subject to price regulation. Basically, I think they made it a generic. And then the firms could set price at their discretion. So if I have discretion over the price I was paying, I think, no, I've got discretion over this. What should I charge? Should I put the price down a bit, or should I just put it up a bit? That's what discretion means to me. Pfizer and Flynn were the dominant suppliers of the drug in the UK at the time. The NHS had no choice but to pay the inflated price for this. And that's all on that government site, otherwise I wouldn't be telling you. The details are there with links to some of the things in the process.
Shingles was mercy. You need structure, you need predictability.
Well, as predicted, Joe Biden has a rebound case of COVID after taking Paxlovid, and this was completely expected. I even tweeted about this on July 21st when it was announced that Biden had COVID. Here's my tweet. Next headline, President Joe Biden, who was fully vaccinated and boosted twice, has tested positive for a second time after a round of Paxlovid. That was meant to be sort of a joke tweet, although I knew that there was a very strong possibility this would happen. That was in response to Biden just testing positive to COVID on July 21st after being quadruple vaxxed, knowing that he was going to be starting his Paxlovid round. And sure enough, 9 days later, Biden, who's quadruple vaxxed, pumped full of Paxlovid, has a rebound case after reportedly beating COVID just a few days ago. He even went out. He left quarantine, took off his mask, shook hands with people, spoke to people, and it turns out now he's got COVID again. And I swear to you, I'm not an oracle or a psychic. Anyone who's been paying attention knew this was likely to happen. Now, here's the White House's statement, as described last week, acknowledging the potential for so-called rebound COVID positivity observed in a small percentage of patients treated with Paxlovid. The president has increased testing. After testing negative on Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, and Friday morning, the president tested positive late Saturday morning. So Biden contracted COVID even though he's had 4 doses of the vaccine. He's decided that his 4 doses might not be enough protection, even though they told us and even forced us all to take it, saying, do it so we can end the pandemic, you anti-vaxxer you. He's then given 30 pills of Paxlovid over the course of 5 days. This is 3 pills in the morning, 3 pills at night for 5 days straight. Even though Paxlovid is experimental for people who've been vaccinated, it's only ever been tested on unvaccinated, high-risk patients. Biden takes it anyway, knowing that they have no data on this drug for people like him, and there have been quite a few rebound cases. And guess what happens? He gets a rebound case of COVID. So they're still trying to tell us that it's rare. Even though Fauci and Biden gets COVID after taking Paxlovid, they tell us, no, trust us, it's rare. How can they continue to say this with a straight face? I mean, so far, the 2 most recognizable advocates of these vaccines and drugs, Fauci and Biden, both have ended up with rebound cases. This reminds me of breakthrough cases of COVID. They were supposed to be rare, and now every single person that's had COVID
we should say nearly every single person that has COVID, no matter how many shots of the vaccine they've had. And no one knows why the drug keeps doing this. Pfizer doesn't have any answers. The CDC, FDA, Fauci, none of them can tell us why this drug is seemingly only suppressing the virus for a few days rather than eliminating it. Some outlets, like the New York Times, speculate the reason is people are taking it so early and the drug works so well, but the patient doesn't develop antibodies, so they just catch it a second time, 5 days later. Right? How stupid do they think we are? The drug works too well. That's why it's causing these rebounds. You can't make these narratives up. Now, I can make a guess as to why it might be happening. The cocktail of drugs they use contains a drug also used for HIV patients. And as we know, HIV is a virus that isn't ever cured, it's just suppressed. So does that have something to do with it? I have no idea, but neither do they. We're all just guessing. But I wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be the reason. I can't imagine the actual reason being, it just works so well. That's why this is happening. But get this. Despite the fact that Pfizer's vaccines have failed to end the pandemic, they have not stopped the spread, nor have made COVID symptoms symptomless. Now people are taking dose after dose after dose, hoping the next one will finally do the trick. And despite the fact that Paxlovid is also not showing to live up to its promise, at least not with vaccinated people, Pfizer is running away with the bank. They've been feeding off of the fear of the American taxpayer and are seeing record profits while doing it. This was reported on Thursday. Pfizer's quarterly sales surged to record highs, driven by COVID vaccine and antiviral treatment Paxlovid. Pfizer's revenue grew by 47% to $27.7 billion compared to the second quarter last year. They saw a net income of $9.9 billion, a 78% increase over the same period during 2021. Pfizer maintained its 2022 sales guidance for its COVID-19 vaccine of $32 billion and is still expecting $22 billion for its oral antiviral Paxlovid. So they're making a ton of money, record profits, and everyone is still getting COVID and even getting rebound cases after taking their high-priced pills. And now, knowing that fewer people are going to take the vaccine because people realize it didn't stop the spread, they caught COVID anyway. Most still felt like crap and missed many days of work. So they don't see a reason to take a fourth, fifth, or sixth dose. Pfizer, anticipating that demand will slow for the vaccine, has decided to raise their prices. Yep, they've raised it 27%. That's quite an increase. But honestly, I expected more than 27% because I would imagine more than 27% of currently vaccinated people will refrain from taking another dose. Now, I'm surprised they didn't double the price. Now, I don't know how they're going to convince all of the people who got the first 3 or 4 doses of the vaccine who still got COVID anyway to keep dosing up unless they get government officials and companies to continue pushing for mandates, and that's possible. Politicians and media keep getting big pharma money, so I'm sure we'll still be hearing messages of more doses being needed and pressure for mandates. You just got to follow the money. Now that Pfizer's experiences record profits, they aren't inclined to want to go backwards, and they'll do whatever it takes for survival. Remember, these are record profits on top of the fact that we, the taxpayers, actually funded Pfizer's development of the COVID vaccine. The government gave nearly $2 billion of our taxpayer money to Pfizer to help develop them. And here they are now, raising the price on us while continuing to take our money. The government just ordered 171 million doses of the Omicron-specific vaccine for this fall. And by the time the variant-specific vaccine rolls out, we'll likely be onto a new variant. So what are the chances this new vaccine works to stop the spread? If it's anything like these previous shots, the chances are dismal. So if the vaccine works to prevent severe illness and deaths, that's obviously a good thing. But that would mean only a particular subset of the population would need it. And that would cut into Pfizer's profits because we don't have 171 million people over 65 in this country. And now look, the vaccine does seem to give better odds for a period of time to people who are older. The government and the media know, despite telling us that these vaccines are a miracle, that it is only for a period of time. That is why they're pushing for more doses and prescribing Paxlovid to anyone and everyone who gets COVID despite a lack of data. And they're saying it's better to be safe than sorry. Or is it better to just line the pockets of Pfizer with taxpayer money on pharmaceuticals that are performing well below expectations. Biden at last check-in seems to be doing well. Here he is.
Hey folks, Joe Biden here. Tested positive this morning. I've been working from home for the next couple of days. And I'm feeling fine. Everything's good. I can end my
So here's the thing. I know people are saying, look, the vaccines work, Paxlovid works, Biden isn't dead. But most people don't die from COVID. Even older people are more likely to survive than not. And we don't know why Biden is doing so well. Is it because he's quadruple vaxxed? We don't know. Is it because he took Paxlovid? We don't know. Is it because Omicron is less severe? We don't know. And the problem is, because we don't know, there's a good chance the government and businesses, and certainly Big Pharma, with all of their influence and desire for revenue, particularly Pfizer, will continue to push us all into more doses, more pills, without any data to show us what it is exactly that's working, if any of it. And of course, if you're in a high-risk category, you should do everything you can to survive. You might as well try everything you feel comfortable with. I'm not discouraging that, but wouldn't it be nice to know what it is exactly that's actually going to help you, if any of them at all? Thank you for watching the Kim Iverson Show. In the near future, I will be expanding the show by bringing on guests to hopefully have interesting conversations and challenging debates. We don't want to live in an echo chamber, so be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel so you never miss a segment. Also, join me in my locals community where I do casual live streams, give updates first, and I can talk about subjects otherwise censored by big tech. You can also interact and share information with each other. It's a pretty cool place, and it's a great way to support my work. Thank you again for joining me. See you next time.
So 12 rules. Which one do you find the hardest to follow yourself?
Probably the hardest one is to tell the truth, or at least not to lie. It's a constant challenge. Well, because it's easy to use your speech in a way that pays off in the short term, and it's difficult to contend with the conflict that's inevitable if you try to do things in a straightforward manner, because that produces short-term conflict. It produces long-term peace, which is a huge advantage, but it's very tempting in the short term to circumvent the problem and pretend that it's not there.
Do you sometimes avoid telling the truth just to be kind?
I try to be as kind as possible, but no.
Good.
I'm tempted to, because I'm fundamentally an agreeable person, surprisingly enough. But I'm convinced that it's better to face things when they need to be faced and to get to the bottom of things, even though that's... And of course, you have to be constituted in that manner if you're going to be a useful psychotherapist, because you can't let things go. They have to be dealt with, just like they have to be dealt with if you're a medical professional. It's unpleasant to tell someone that they have an illness. It hurts their feelings. It upsets them. But if you don't deal with it, then perhaps they die. And psychological issues can be of the same significance.
You talk sometimes about weak men. Why are weak men such a problem?
Well, weak people are a problem in general. And I don't mean physically weak. I mean cowardly, let's say, and deceitful, because I'm thinking it more in terms of moral weakness. Well, there's a variety of reasons. First of all, if you can't support your own weight, let's say, then someone else has to do it. And that's not good. And then if you don't make your pathway, if you don't pick a forthright and useful and noble pathway through life, then you will become bitter and and too hurt by the tragedy of existence, and then you tend to seek your revenge wherever you can get it, and that's not good. So it's a mistake on all fronts. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. It's not good for the community. It's certainly not a good medium to long-term strategy, because life is very, very difficult, and you have to be prepared for that. And I had a watcher the other night. He was at my lecture in Oslo, and he wrote me a letter. He was a 17-year-old boy, and he said that my work had been very helpful to him. His father had died suddenly about 6 months before, and he found his dad when he was dying, and was very, very shocked and horrified and hurt by what had happened. And I had recommended on my YouTube lectures that one thing you could aim for was to be the strongest person at your father's funeral. And so that's what he did. And he helped his mom, and he wrote a 200-word eulogy and got through it. And so, good for him. That's strength and necessary. It's a terrible thing that happened, but he did everything he could not to make it any worse than it had to be.
But do you never see that showing weakness can be a strength too?
Not weakness, vulnerability. That's a whole different thing. To admit to the fact that you're vulnerable, that's a form of courage. That's not a form of weakness. But that leads you to take whatever steps are necessary to deal with that properly. It isn't some facade that you're invulnerable. No one is invulnerable by any stretch of the imagination. And to stand up and face that is the best route that you have.
Well, why do you think so many young men are following you? Because you have a lot of your...
Because I want the best for them. Genuinely. I'm encouraging.
But more than you do for your women?
No, not at
So
all.
why do you think so many are young men?
Oh, well, I think part of it's technological fluke. I mean, I came to prominence, at least in part, on YouTube. So I put my university lectures there. It happens to be the case that 80% of the people who watch YouTube are young men. So there's that, and it's hard to know how to factor that in exactly. But then I think that young women are encouraged a lot, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. But I think that that's less true for young men now, because we believe that there's something pernicious about male competence and activity. It's part of it's part of the notion that the best way to characterize Western societies as a tyrannical patriarchy, which is an appalling doctrine as far as I'm concerned.
Now, how comes that?
Well, it's not a tyrannical patriarchy. So it's not tyrannical, that's the first thing. Certainly not compared to any other governmental form that currently exists and has ever existed. And it's not essentially patriarchal, unless you believe that women haven't contributed in immense part to the construction of what we have now. So, and I also don't believe that, to the degree that it is patriarchal, that its structure is dependent on the expression of power, arbitrary power on the part of men. I think that happens sometimes, but only when things go wrong.
What you're doing and doing now as well is challenging the idea of gender equality. That is very important in Scandinavia. I think it's as you probably know. Why do you think that can be a problem?
Well, I don't think that equality of opportunity is a problem. I think that's a great thing. And anyone with any sense champions equality of opportunity. I mean, even if you're purely selfish, say, and purely self-centered, you want to set up an economy where everyone who had ability could be maximally exploited by everyone else, because then we can all benefit from each other's talents. And so equality of opportunity is an absolutely useful fundamental principle. But that has nothing to do with equality of outcome. Those things aren't even in the same conceptual universe. And to strive for equality of outcome is, well, it's a fool's game and likely to be extraordinarily, it has proved to be in the past, extraordinarily dangerous as well as impossible. So, I mean, one of the things we know, for example, is that, I don't know to what degree it's common knowledge in Scandinavia, but the biggest differences between men and women in the world in terms of temperament and interest are in Scandinavia, and they've maximized as a consequence of your egalitarian policies.
What do you mean by that?
It means that the more egalitarian your state, the bigger the personality differences between men and women. That's like
how do you measure that? How do you know that?
Oh, well, psychologists have perfected, at least to some degree, the measure of personality over the last 30 years with very advanced statistical models. And so what you do is you offer men and women well-validated tests of preference and of personality. And you do that all across the world with tens of thousands of people in multi-country samples. And then you look at the difference between men and women. And then you rank order that by wealth and egalitarian social policy. And what you find is the more egalitarian the society, the more different the men and women become.
Is this something you can recognize, or is it?
I would say, for me, it's quite a simple question, actually. Do we want that our sons and daughters should have the same opportunities and the same dreams or hopes for the good thing, or no? And for me, it's simple to answer that. It's yes, of course. So for me, equality and gender equality is very, very important. For me, also when we talk about gender equality, it's important for me to learn my daughter that her mom can lead and show the way, and her dad can hug and kiss her and show feelings. And I think that's something very important for the hoods where kids grow up, to show feelings, to have these gender equality discussions, to show her a way of opportunities and to strive forward. And it's important both for lonely men and lonely young men, but also for women that feel this roof of glass. They need to fight and to struggle the roof of glass to be successful in their lives.
Do you agree with this? I think that equality of opportunity is a perfectly reasonable proposition. I mean, I have a daughter and a wife. I do everything I can, and many female clients who I've consulted with and helped, and in many cases helped accelerate the development of their career tremendously. It's obviously of great utility to encourage forward striving in young people and people in general. That's not the issue in the least. The issue is the outcome.
Yeah, well, then why do you think the outcome, and these countries where the outcome is more equal, why do you think that leads to bigger differences?
Oh, because there's only two reasons that men and women differ. One is cultural, and the other is biological. And if you minimize the cultural differences, you maximize the biological differences. So, I know everyone's shocked when they hear this. This isn't shocking news. People have known this in the scientific community for at least 25 years. And it's been replicated in the last month 3 times in 3 separate samples, including in Science, which is the world's greatest scientific magazine by a large margin. And it isn't a small effect, it's a huge effect. So,
what does it mean? Does it mean that Scandinavian men and women are having more difficulties meeting each other, talking to each other than other places?
No, not necessarily, but it does mean that there are reasons for differences in participation rates in different occupations that aren't a consequence of socialization. So, for example, this is especially true at the extremes. So, for example, on average, men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. And that's actually the biggest difference we know of psychologically between men and women. And even though men and women are quite similar, all things considered, the extremes make a difference. So imagine that in order to become an engineer, obviously not everyone becomes an engineer, you have to have a particular temperamental proclivity to become an engineer. You have to be extraordinarily interested in things rather than people. Well, most of those people are men. And if you want to become a nurse, well, then you have to be much more interested in people than you are in things. And most of those people are women. And so you get differences in occupational choice that are also, by the way, quite great in Scandinavia, especially in the case of engineering and nursing. That are mostly due to biological differences, and you cannot minimize that by social engineering. So, and it's not a bad thing. Like, look, one of the things you want to ask yourself is that, what is the purpose of setting up a society that offers maximal equality of opportunity? And one of the answers is that you maximize people's free choice. And if you maximize free choice, then you also maximize differences in choice between people. And so you can't have both of those.
But of course it will have differences in choice, of course, because
we are human beings, but I can't see why it differs between me and Skavlan, for instance. Because of course it differs in biological things, but not in choices. Because I think more how we raise them, how we live, education, a sort of culture, attitudes form a human being, whether or not they are a girl or a boy when they grow up. And if I raise my daughter to become a leader, to be self-confident, to have a high education, for instance, I think she will have a good platform to become a civil engineer, to become a CEO of a company, or to become a nurse.
Well, that is what people who think that the differences between people who are primarily culturally constructed believe, but it's not what the evidence suggests.
Okay. We don't agree on that.
Yes, the other thing I should say about this, what's necessary to understand about this is this is not a contentious issue among informed scientists. We've known this for 25 years. And so, and it's a perverse effect. No one expected it.
Why do you talk then about, you talk about chaos? I mean, is what we're experiencing now chaos? Your book is called An Antidote to Chaos. What is the chaos?
Well, I think the chaos is the uncertainty that so many people feel about the meaning of life, about the position of the world. That's fundamentally what I was aiming at. And what I'm trying to do in my online lectures and with my book is to provide people with a guideline to meaning. So one of the points that I make in my lectures, for example, is that we actually have a biological instinct for meaning that orients us in the world. And that instinct manifests itself when we place ourselves in a position in the world where we're competent, where what we're doing is working, so that we're not too terrified and anxious, but also while we're simultaneously advancing ourselves and improving our ability to cope with the world. So, for example, if you watch an athlete, a high-level athlete, who's at the peak of his or her performance, you see someone who's extraordinarily practiced at what they're doing and has developed the expertise necessary to do it. But then you also see them push themselves on that developmental edge to make themselves just that much better. And that function is associated with an intrinsic sense of meaning. And whenever you see anyone manifest that, you are automatically drawn to it. You see that when an actor pushes him or herself beyond their limits. You see that when someone speaks extemporaneously and manages it extraordinarily well. And I'm trying to help people understand that this meaning is a true phenomenon. It's not a secondary thing. And also to point out that most of the time, that meaning is associated with the adoption of responsibility. Which is also something that people don't understand.
But part of the chaos is that the rules are so hard to see. There are not obvious rules anymore.
Well, part of the chaos is that we're transforming our landscape socially, culturally, technologically so rapidly that it's hard for people to gain footing. And so it destabilizes us.
Is this the world? Isn't the real problem that quite a lot of men and also young men are struggling to deal with the fact that women now are more in control of their lives than earlier?
I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is that the idea that the West is a patriarchal tyranny is rapidly translated into the idea that young men who strive forward are to be regarded with suspicion because they're doing nothing but manifesting the same sort of tyrannical power that has kept women oppressed for the last 2,000 years. And I think that entire narrative is appalling, right to the core. So, and I don't see that it's helpful to anyone, because making young men weak or failing to encourage them to be strong, that's a better way of putting it, certainly does the young men no good, and it doesn't do the young women any good at all if they want to find a partner.
So you're saying that all along, women and men have had the same opportunities always?
No, I'm basically saying that all along, hardly anyone had any opportunities. I mean, if you look at the history of the world, things really started to shift in about 1895. But before 1895, the typical person in the West lived on less than $1 a day in today's money, which is about 2/3 the UN cutoff for abject poverty by today's standards. And so what happened through most of the history of the world is that men and women struggled mightily together, sometimes at each other's throats, but mostly cooperatively, to keep the wolf from the door and the tyrant at bay. Life was very, 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 very difficult. And the fact that we survived at all meant that fundamentally we cooperated despite the fact that we're rife with stupidity, ignorance, and malevolence.
But what's so terrifying with gender equality?
Nothing. Except when people gerrymander the data, it's like, what do you mean by equality? Do you want women to have their free choice or not? If you do, they're not going to pick occupations that are the same as the occupations men pick.
But we have structures today that women need to struggle. They need to take a step to have the possibility to become like a prime minister. As we talked before, we don't have any prime minister in Sweden, but have been a woman, for instance. We have a lower rate of female entrepreneurs. Men had a higher income than women in Sweden, even if they work with the same tasks. And we need to work with gender equality, I think, even in the lower class in schools, to learn kids how to play with dolls. I think we need to learn boys to be more sensitive, but also young girls to become more self-confident. And I think that's very important too.
Well, the problem with that is the data indicate that the consequence of the policies that you're promoting have maximized the differences between men and women. So that isn't what it's doing. Now, that isn't to say that the movement towards egalitarianism is necessarily a bad thing, but a tremendous amount of that's being driven not by social policy, but by technology. I mean, the narrative that we're fed now is that up until 1960, when the enlightened feminists developed their egalitarian doctrines, men had kept women down, and they finally rose. And the truth of the matter is that from about 1895 onward, there was a series of technological revolutions that were extraordinarily powerful in their impact, that allowed women to step forward free of many of the burdens that had kept them back in the past. Birth control being one of them, but only one. Sanitary facilities of all sorts. Plumbing had a huge role to play. Tampons had a huge role to play, as did sanitary napkins. All of these technologies developed that enabled women to move forward, with less biological impediments.
So what would you say is the best period in history to be both man and woman?
Oh, clearly now. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Anyone who would like to
worry for the chaos. You worry about the chaos.
Well, it's nice if we could make things better than they are. And I would say that just as all around the world, we're raising living standards at a rate that is absolutely unparalleled in human history, we're also in danger of destabilizing our culture in the West. And I don't think that's a good idea.
Part of that problem you talked about there is what we call the identity politics.
Yes, I think that any political position that puts someone's group identity ahead of their individuality is a regression to a tribalism that will definitely become violent. Because that's what happens to tribes.
What's an example?
Of identity politics playing that role. Yeah. Well, it happens every time people divide themselves into tribal groups. I mean, what we're trying to do to make peace is to bring people under the rubric of something approximating a single identity, a shared identity. And I mean, the evidence that people fight in tribes, that's the entire evidence of the human race. And the farther back you go in time, and the smaller the tribal groups become, the higher the rates of inter-tribal warfare and the higher the rates of homicide.
And this, you're talking about this is part. I think it's part of why you also people feel some kind of ambivalence towards you also. We call it controversial from time to time. And I don't know, do you like that, being controversial? Do you enjoy provoking groups like?
No, and I don't provoke people. I just say what I think. I just say what I believe to be true. Well, I don't. I say what I believe to be true, and people find that provoking. That's not the same as me provoking people. If I was provoking people, I would be setting out to upset them. And I'm not setting out to upset them. I'm just setting out to say what I believe to be true. And I'm a very...
You're following the rule we talked about.
Yes, and when I'm talking about gender issues, for example, personality, that's actually one of my fields of expertise. I know the literature, and it says exactly what I said it says. And as I said as well, it's been replicated 3 times in the last month. The London Times came out 3 weeks ago and said that the finding that gender differences maximize as egalitarian policies are developed is now one of the most solidly grounded findings ever produced by social scientists. So, you can make of that what you want. It's not something that I particularly enjoy. It just happens to be the case.
So what are the fake news about Jordan Peterson?
Oh, well, the fake news is one is that I'm provocative. The other is that I have a right-leaning or a particularly conservative agenda. And the mere fact that I oppose radical
you are a conservative at heart, aren't you?
Not particularly. I don't have the temperament for it. So, for example, conservative people tend to be low in trait openness, which is associated with creativity, and I'm very high in trait openness. And so, temperamentally, I'm not much of a conservative at all. And people who knew me, people who come to my house, would certainly not think that I was a conservative person. So, or if they saw the breadth of my ideas, I'm also very entrepreneurially minded, which also is not associated with conservatism. I am a great skeptic of well-meaning attempts to adjust large social systems on the basis of ideology, but that doesn't make me conservative. It just makes me educated social scientist.
So when are you provoked yourself?
When am I provoked myself? Oh, being called a Nazi I find somewhat provoking. And that, I think, one of the most absurd days, no, certainly not. One of the most absurd days in my life in the last 2 years, and there's been plenty of them, was a day probably 3 months ago where I was accused by one magazine in the UK of being a Jewish shill and another magazine in the United States of being an alt-right Nazi. I thought, well, that's it. I pretty much covered both ends of the insult spectrum. It's like, yeah, that's right. So you can average that out to 0, I suppose. So I find that somewhat provoking. But you take the good with the bad, and I'm not complaining about it. But it is provoking.
Is it true that you have an opinion about people having to stay married if they have children? I mean,
yes, it's better if they do. It's better if they do.
I think most people would agree that that's the best. But as far as I understand, you think that the laws should say that we have to stay together.
Oh, it isn't obvious to me that the liberalization of the divorce laws in the 60s was for everyone's best interest. Now, exactly what that means, I'm not sure. I mean, it's okay for people to go to hell in a handbasket in their own particular means of choosing. But we do know that stable, intact, 2-parent families are better for children. So, it depends on who you put first. And I'm not saying that everyone who's got divorced is reprehensible. I understand that life is very difficult and that it's a very hard thing to maintain a relationship over a very long period of time. But it's not obvious to me that we're better off for the additional plethora of choices. So we'll see.
But isn't that an individual choice and not something the law should decide?
Well, it depends to some degree on whether the law should advocate for children. I mean, children really can't speak for themselves, can they? They need some authority to speak for them. And so we do know, like the data, for example, on child welfare indicates crystal clear that children from intact 2-parent families do better on virtually every measure that you could possibly imagine. So what are we supposed to make of that? It's irrelevant. It's like maybe the rule should be if you don't have children, then no problem. Divorce is no problem. But if you have children, and plus, it's not like divorce solves the problem with regards to your relationship with your ex. It often produces a whole boatload of problems that you didn't expect. So, but I'm not advocating draconian measures to keep people together who don't want to be together. That horse has already left the barn.
Should there be an age limit on the children where you can divorce? Or?
Well, the older the children are, the less effective.
Yeah.
So,
what's the ideal age then?
For divorce?
Yes.
45, something like that.
I don't know. I don't know what the ideal age is.
What about when you were a kid yourself? Who was your masculine role model?
Oh, I think I had a number of them, but it would primarily be my father and some of my friends, because peers play an important role in development, especially after the age of about 4. But I would definitely say it was my father.
And how would you describe his masculinity?
Well, to your point, he spent a tremendous amount of time with me when I was a kid. And they're very fond memories as far as I'm concerned. Like when I was very young, 2 and 3, my dad would come home from work, and he spent an hour and a half with me at night for a long time, teaching me to read, which has been of inestimable benefit with me. And he did many things with me. You know, we hunted and trapped and canoed and fished and he was a harsh guy in many ways. He was a disciplinarian in some sense, but he was very honest and very good craftsman, and so I learned a lot about trying to conduct yourself in a respectable manner from him. So,
were you a tough kid, or were you a careful kid, or what kind of kid were you?
I guess it depends on what you mean by tough. No, I don't think if you would have met me when I was a kid, you would have thought I was tough. I'm kind of a tender-hearted character, and I was skipped a grade, and I was small for my age, and so I certainly wasn't physically tough in the standard sense. Because I was small and because I'd been put ahead of grade, I was never particularly facile at sports, and that was kind of a problem. I did something about that when I got older, but I hung around with tough kids, but that was partly because most of the kids that were in the town I grew up in were either tough kids or were sort of off the radar entirely, and maybe that was a certain amount of compensation. I could defend myself verbally fairly well, but that tended to get me hung up by my shirt collar in closets and played catch with on the stairs and that sort of thing in junior high. So,
is it like? Do you come from an environment where weakness was a bad thing, where self-pitying was a bad thing?
Where self-pitying was a bad thing, I would say yes. I come from that background, but that was par for the course, I would say, when I grew up. And I mean, where I grew up, it was still a frontier place in some sense. You know, my town was only 50 years old, and people were essentially self-reliant to the degree that was possible. It was certainly the case within my family on both my mother and father's side. And the idea was, but this wasn't particularly, what would you say, unique to my family. You know, the ethos was feeling sorry for yourself isn't going to be of much utility. You should get out there and do what you can do. And
straighten your life.
Yes, if you can do that. And I got lots of encouragement from my parents, from both of them. Certainly, I have a very good relationship with my mother, who I love very much. And we shared a sense of humor, which was lovely. And my dad, although he was a harsh taskmaster, also was very encouraging to me in that he believed that I could do whatever I put my mind to. And he helped instill that conviction in me in a manner that I hope wasn't and isn't too, let's say, narcissistic. It wasn't a matter of privilege. It was a matter of drive and dedication and effort. And so that was one of the things that's so sad about what I'm doing. You know, I'm going all around the world, and I'm talking to many, many people. I've talked to about 250,000 people in the last 6 months, and I offer encouraging words. You know, I believe that people are stronger than their misfortunes. I believe that if you turn around and confront the vulnerability that's part and parcel of life, you'll find within yourself a strength that will transcend that. And I believe that not only to be true, but supported by the best clinical evidence. And that it's important for lost young people, male and female alike, to develop a vision and take on some responsibility and understand that they have a vital role to play in the world, that the lack of their best hurts everything. And I think that's true. And the sad thing is that there's very many people who have not heard an encouraging word in their life. And it takes so little to encourage them that it's rather tragic. You know, I have people come up to me, and I mean all, and by all the time, I mean many people every day in the lectures and on the street who tell me, I was in a bad place, I was struggling, I've been watching your lectures, I've been reading your book, I put my life together, I'm trying to be responsible, tell the truth, things are way better. Thank you. And so that's, can't get any better than that. So, and that's that.
Can I just come back to the divorce question? What is the best situation to tell your children we don't love each other anymore, but we're going to stay together for your sake, so that you'll have a semblance of a happy family life, or to say, I'm sorry, this doesn't work. We'll continue to love you, but we'll part, and we'll love you the rest of our lives, and maybe we even can be happy on our different.
Well, sometimes, often, you have to make the best of a bad lot. You know, I mean, sometimes the best possible choice isn't there in front of you, and I would say, well, it's generally up to each person to decide under the circumstances which of those pathways forward would be likely to cause the least amount of misery for, well, you know, for you, for your wife, for your kids. You know, you have to balance all of that out. That's not an easy thing to do. I would also say that by the time it comes to the point where you're divorcing, all you may have left are one of two suboptimal choices. And you know, so part of what I do as well is to try to lecture about what sort of interactions might facilitate a marriage such that it's less likely to end up in a situation like that. Now, sometimes people have irreconcilable differences, and there's nothing that can be done about it. But often, people are not good at negotiating, partly because they won't admit what they want, because then they know if they're not getting it. They make their criteria for failure clear, and that frightens them. So they keep themselves vague. Because they don't know what they want, they can't communicate it to their partners. And they don't know how to do that anyways, because they're not very good at negotiating. And then they avoid conflict. And so then the conflict, because when you avoid conflict, all you do is store it up for the future. And, you know, I've seen lots of people on the brink of divorce and in horrible marital situations, horrible family situations. And, you know, they have 25,000 disputes that haven't been settled. And at that point, it's like, maybe divorce is the best option, but that doesn't mean that it was the best option from the beginning. So hopefully people can learn to negotiate and to tell each other the truth, and that will increase the probability that they can maintain their relationships in a stable manner. But, and I'm not suggesting, by the way, that you didn't do that, because I don't know anything about your situation. So,
but I'm a little bit surprised that you don't take into account our level of irrationality. We're super irrational people. When you discuss, it's like we can all just agree on these things and look at the science and we'll fix everything. That's not how it goes.
No, I don't think people are irrational at all. I think that it's very difficult for us to negotiate, and it's amazing that we ever live in peace at all.
Yeah,
it's tremendously difficult.
So tell me, one last question. When are you irrational yourself?
When I'm hungry.
What happens then?
Little things bother me far more than they would bother any reasonable person. So that's, and I would say, if you find that you're irrational like that frequently, one of the things you might try is to eat something.
And you have a peculiar diet. You
could say that again, yes.
What is it?
Well, there seems to be some sort of autoimmune condition in my family, and some of it's also reflected in my wife's family, unfortunately. And the culmination of that was that my daughter had an extraordinarily serious set of autoimmune dysfunctions that caused her an endless amount of misery and destruction. And she found out about 3 years ago, as a consequence of very, very careful experimentation, that if she ate nothing but meat then all her symptoms disappeared. So, and her primary symptoms were degenerative bone disease that had been diagnosed as idiopathic arthritis, which means arthritis with no known cause. And she had her ankle and her hip replaced when she was in her teens because of that, and had 38 other affected joints. So it was hell. And she cottoned on to the fact that diet had something to do with it for a variety of reasons I can't go into, and radically restricted her eating, and all her symptoms disappeared.
So that is what you do as well?
Yes, well, I had many, but not all of the same symptoms. And I watched what happened to her, and I thought, well, that's impossible, because it was. And she encouraged me to try it, and I thought, well, I can try anything for a month, And so I started for a month, and I had changes almost immediately. And so I've continued with a very restricted diet for about 2 years, and extraordinarily restricted for the last 8 months. So, and that seems to be working for me quite well, even though it's, it has its downsides.
Jordan Peterson, it's been so interesting talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Hope you enjoyed the clip. For more interesting conversations, please hit subscribe.
Well, that's one of the more positive welcomes I've had from you.
All right, yeah, thank you for coming. If you'd like to give a few opening remarks, and then we'll move on to some questions.
Okay, so I have about half an hour for this, I guess. Yeah?
About 15 to 20 minutes for the opening remarks.
That's fine, no problem. So I think I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about hierarchy. It's a small talk that I've been developing as I've been doing my public lectures over the last couple of weeks. It's an elaboration of some of the ideas I put forth in some of my scientific writings and in Maps of Meaning, but more particularly in 12 Rules for Life in Rule 1, which is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And it's in part a meditation on hierarchy. And I want to talk about the political significance of that, and let you know how I've been trying to sort that out in my own imagination. So I'm going to put, and I think it sheds light on the political, on the nature of political debate itself, or maybe deeper light on why temperamental factors might contribute to political framing and perception, because we know that people tend to vote with temperament, although there are other reasons that influence their political allegiance and their voting behavior. So let's start with a couple of simple observations. And the first is that complex biological creatures, and even simple biological creatures for that matter, have to move forward in the world. And so that's the case for any creature that's mobile. And that goes all the way down to one-celled organisms. The idea that approach and avoidance are the fundamental motivations is a very old biological idea, and it seems to apply across levels of analysis in the animal kingdom. And it's true for us as well. And we have to move forward towards things because we have requirements. There are things that we require to keep us alive and to keep us wanting to be alive as well. And those are different things. And we move forward towards things that we value. So there's two propositions there. The first is that we have to move forward because there are things to move forward to, because there are things we need and want. And the second is that to move forward towards something is simultaneously to value it. And so one of the implications of that is that we always live in a framework of value. There's no escaping that. I detailed this out quite substantially in my book, Maps of Meaning, but we're always at a place, and we're always moving towards a place that in principle has some advantage over the place we're at. Otherwise, why move towards it? And so what that means is that there's no life without value. At least there's no human life without value. Out of necessity, and also not only out of necessity at the physiological level, but also out of necessity at the psychological level. Because another thing that you might point out, that I think is usefully pointed out, is that not only do you have to move from point A to B in life, but point A is often a very difficult place to be, because we're fragile and bounded and mortal and limited, and because we know that. And so one of the implications of that, as many great religious traditions are at pains to illustrate, or demonstrate, or proclaim, is that life is essentially suffering. And I believe that to be a fundamental truth. But perhaps not the most fundamental truth, because I think the most fundamental truth is that despite the fact that life is suffering, people can transcend that. And partly the way they transcend that is by pursuing things of value. And so that if there is no value proposition at hand, then you have no meaning to justify the difficult conditions of your life. And that's brutally difficult for people. You know, Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear any how. And you see, and I've certainly seen this as a clinical practitioner, that people who have no purpose in their life are embittered by the difficulties of their life. And they become first bitter, and then resentful, and then revengeful, and then cruel. And there's plenty of places to go past cruel. That's just where you start if you're really on a downhill path. All right, so those are the first propositions. The second proposition would be, well, if you're going to pursue something of value, because you're a social creature, you're going to pursue that thing of value in a social space, and that means you're going to compete and cooperate with people around you in the pursuit of that value. And what that inevitably means is that, given that the pursuit of anything valuable is going to be a collective enterprise, that you're going to produce a hierarchy, or maybe more than one hierarchy, but at least a hierarchy of competence in relationship to that pursuit. So it doesn't matter what you decide to pursue, maybe you're going to do that cooperatively, you're going to find that you and other people vary in your ability to manage that pursuit effectively and efficiently. And so there's going to be a hierarchy of people, from those who are very good at the pursuit, maybe it's pole vaulting, maybe it's delivering massages, maybe it's delivering groceries, maybe it's setting up an enterprise. It doesn't matter. But if it's a valuable pursuit, and you pursue it socially, you're going to produce a hierarchy. And the hierarchy is going to be one of competence. And so if you're going to pursue value, then you're going to construct a hierarchy. And then there's an implication from that, which is that if you construct a hierarchy, most of the people within that hierarchical structure are a minority of people.
Huh. No.
Мы знаем, что с техническими возможностями прокачки стали меньше, они сузились. Почему? Потому что процесс технического обслуживания различных агрегатов чрезвычайно затруднен из-за тех ограничений и санкций, которые ввела Европа, а именно Европейский Союз. Эти санкции не дают возможности оперативно производить техническое обслуживание, менять запасные части, выполнять капитальный ремонт и другие регламентные работы с оборудованием, необходимым для прокачки. По мере того, как будут выполняться эти работы, «Газпром», соответственно, будет иметь возможность прокачивать больше. «Газпром» был и остается надежным гарантом обязательств, выполнения обязательств. Но он не может гарантировать прокачку, если импортные агрегаты не могут обслуживаться из-за европейских.
Der andere Strang ist aber, dass wir vor allem, und das war mir sehr wichtig, den Augsburgerinnen und Augsburgern eben auch zeigen wollen, dass es eben durchaus harte Zeiten werden können. Und deswegen haben wir beispielsweise die Beleuchtung an unseren historischen Gebäuden abgeschaltet. Die Brunnen laufen nicht mehr so lange wie normalerweise, weil es soll einfach auch ein Zeichen sein, dass die Zeiten eben nicht normal sind und wir uns alle darauf einstellen müssen, dass wir wirklich Energie sparen müssen.
Ich denke, das ist eine gute Idee, weil wir eine Energiekrise haben, die gemeinschaftlich gelöst werden muss.
Wow, they're really
This video shows the moment a ship carrying grain left the Ukrainian port of Odessa, the first to do so since the Russian invasion blocked shipping through the Black Sea 5 months ago. The engineer on board says he feels liberated being able to sail away from Ukraine. It was a great feeling. I felt as if we became free after being detained for a
The Body Keeps the Score is the beautiful and suggestive title of a book published in 2014 by a Dutch professor of psychiatry at Boston University called Bessel van der Kolk. The book has proved immensely significant because it emphasizes an idea that has for too long escaped psychiatrists and psychotherapists. Van der Kolk stresses that people who are suffering emotionally are unlikely to do so just in their minds. Crucially, their symptoms almost always show up in their bodies, in the way they sit or breathe, in how they hold their shoulders, in their sleep patterns, in their digestion processes, in the way they treat their spots, and in their attitude to exercise. Taking the body more seriously opens up new avenues for both the diagnosis and treatment of emotional unwellness. Instead of simply seeing a person as a disembodied mind, which must talk its way to a cure, a therapist is advised to see the body as a kind of score sheet of the emotional experiences that its owner has been through, a score sheet that should be read and attended to as carefully as any mental account. To take one example, many people who have grown up having to deal with the overwhelming rage of a parent will have learned to suppress their own anger and their desire to hit back at those who hurt them. In their minds, they will have become meek and precisely attuned to fulfilling the wishes of others, however unreasonable these might be. But as importantly, in their bodies, they will have learnt to be very still, almost frozen, because a part of them associates the expression of anything exuberant or powerful with the risk of bringing about retaliation from others. These people might sit in a particularly stiff way, or have an ingrained resistance to running that has nothing to do with laziness. What is at stake is a fear of one's own vitality. In trying to treat such people, Van der Kolk goes beyond advising traditional talk therapy. He would also recommend that they try, under the supervision of a therapeutically trained teacher, kickboxing or karate, competitive running or swimming, sports these people might long have resisted because of a cowed relationship to their strength. They might also try out rhythmically chanting or drumming, thereby additionally releasing pent-up longings to assert one's right to be. Traumatized people tend to have bodies that are either too alert, responding to every breath and touch, flinching and bristling at contact, or else too numb, shut down, heavy and immobile. Treatment seeks to find a more comfortable halfway house between these two extremes. Van der Kolk's book helps us to think anew of how to deal with people who, at the start of their lives, were not properly held, caressed and soothed in the way that young children desperately need to be in order to feel at home in their own skin.
As part of their work, Vander Kolk and his team opened up a sensory integration clinic in Boston, a sort of indoor playground for children and adults, where one can get back in touch with a body that was not properly and by loving hands touched or cuddled, gently swung from side to side or hung upside down for a giggly moment. In the sensory integration clinic, under the instruction of a therapist, one might dive onto foam-filled mats, have a roll around in a ball pool, jump on a swing and balance on a beam. It sounds childlike and is meant to be, offering a serious chance to go back a step to correct a long-standing alienation. Those who were once neglected by emotionally stunted parents have often almost literally withdrawn from their bodies. They own them, but they do not properly live in them. They might be rendered deeply uncomfortable if anyone touches their shoulders or strokes their back. They might intuitively think their body was disgusting, because that's how it once seemed in the eyes of those who were meant to look after them. For such people, Vander Kolk might advise a therapeutically informed massage to help rebuild a basic trust in one's skin and limbs. As he puts it, he wants the body to have experiences that deeply and viscerally contradict the helplessness, rage, or collapse that resulted from trauma. It is no doubt deeply unfortunate that a difficult past appears to give us physical as well as mental symptoms, but the body's travails can, in Vander Kolk's optimistic account, also become a source of memory and evidence when our minds have otherwise seized up or fatally doubt the legitimacy of their own feelings. We can start to remember what might have happened to us by asking ourselves questions in therapy, and at the same time by taking a look at how we are sitting, how we breathe, and how we feel when someone we love proposes to hold us. Then we can hope to be healed, not only by wise arguments and kind voices, however consoling these might be, but also by dancing, swaying from side to side on a gigantic swing, chanting in unison, or, best of all, surrendering ourselves to a very long and very nourishing hug from someone we have quietly dared to trust. How to Overcome Your Childhood is a book that teaches us how character is developed, the concept of emotional inheritance, the formation of our concepts of being good or bad, and the impact of parental styles of love on the way we choose adult partners.
Dr. Army, let's start talking about what self-sabotaging is.
So self-sabotaging literally is what it sounds like. It's when a person literally undercuts their ability typically to achieve a goal. So, or an intention of any kind. It doesn't even have to be as aspirational as a goal. It's just even daily health habits, from getting a decent night's sleep to eating healthy to brushing their teeth. I mean, it can be any small health habits, big health habits. And they almost set things up in a way, not intentionally, but in a way that they're not even fully aware of. that all but guarantees a fail. And I always tell my clients that self-sabotage is a way to support your dysfunctional hypothesis.
That's what
So if your hypothesis is, I'm a failure, and then all these self-sabotaging things come out, there's a certain satisfaction at the end of the day saying, hey, look, I'm a failure. You know, like there's this almost very upside down kind of win that takes place. And I have to say self-sabotage in some form plagues over half of the clinical population I work with. And that when they're able to see, they don't even think of it at the time, but it's almost as though they come to each session presenting the week's failures to me. Wow. You know, like a prize, like a confirmation. At least I was right about that, right? And that I sometimes wonder if the self-sabotage, which is then associated with the whatever negative position they're trying to maintain, becomes the one part of their life they can control.
Wow, that was so beautifully said. Grace, when you're working with clients, what are some common ways that people self-sabotage?
Okay. Why? That's why.
At Leo Vegas Online Casino, we take your entertainment seriously. We're passionate with our drive for innovation, and you're in for an exceptional ride. Want to spin reels? Easy. Flip cards? Done. Brand new exclusive games? We've got you. Trust the experts. Leo Vegas, king of casino.
We would like you to transfer to a maximum security prison specializing in criminally insane.
We suspect this man killed 14 women.
We'd like you to befriend him.
Look, it's scared. This place is terrifying. I'm just thinking around. Everybody wants to be a part of something. I am part of something.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Clay, if you didn't already know. Just a reminder that I'm uploading these videos as a podcast now as well. I'm just taking the audio portion of the video and uploading it as a podcast. So if you're the type of person that prefers that medium, check those links below. Also, I have an audio question feature now as well. So if you have any questions and you want to leave me an audio question that I can include in a future video or put at the end of a video if it's a relevant question, check that link below and go leave me an audio question. So the topic of today's video is how to exist in a world that doesn't make sense. It seems like certain people kind of just like fit into the world, and it's easier for them to really get it, to exist in this like chaotic system. And then there are other people that seem to find it a bit of a struggle to really fit in, or they can do it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's sort of like trudging through deep snow. that's almost how it feels to fit into this like chaos that exists outside of us. We sort of know ourselves and we know what makes sense to us, and then outside of us there's just this sea of confusion, and we're trying to make sense of it all the time, and it can be quite exhausting. So today I want to talk about a few ideas that I have come up with over the years to kind of deal with this issue. How can I reframe my mind to deal with the sea of confusion in the world? I think the root of the problem for me is I look around and I just see a lot of illogical behavior, things that don't really make sense. People doing things for weird reasons that when I try to find the root of the reason, it doesn't seem like there is one. There's a lot of people just following rules for the sake of rules. Maybe they respect the system and so they follow it without question. I find that hard. I find it very hard to fit into those kind of systems. I really respect people that have good reasons for things. I respect when people have logical reasons behind what they're doing. So if you've ever watched Star Trek, I realize some people kind of hate Star Trek, some people like it. I've always liked Star Trek, even when I was a little kid. I watched Star Trek, and I still watch it. There's some new series like Star Trek Discovery. So one of my favorite characters on Star Trek is the Vulcans. And the Vulcans are this race of people that they have this chaotic past, and they came out of it by embracing logic and suppressing all emotions. So they're these very stoic, logical, rational people, and they base everything on logic. And so they work alongside the humans in the show, and they kind of view humans as impulsive, overly emotional, irrational, illogical. It does seem like there's this underlying theme in Star Trek, though, that regardless of humans being so irrational all the time and overly emotional and basing their decisions based on gut feelings and emotion rather than logic and reason, that for some reason humans have done quite well and they seem to come out on top regardless, right? So kind of in the same way that Vulcans view humanity, I find that maybe this is why I like them, I also seem to view
Depression is not caused by a chemical imbalance. That is the headline of the weekend. Or at least there's no evidence backing the serotonin hypothesis of depression. So this is what researchers with the University College London have found after conducting a meta-analysis, which is a high-quality review of dozens of studies, and it was published in a peer-reviewed journal. So this is the gold standard of psychological research. They summarized their research by saying there's no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, and no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity or concentrations. Now, this is not surprising to the researchers and scientists who studied depression. They've known for decades that depression is a multifaceted disease without a single cause. But 85 to 90% of the public do believe that depression is a chemical imbalance, and that's one reason why so many people take antidepressant medication. More than 1 out of every 8 American adults and 1 in 6 adults in the UK take an antidepressant medication. And, that's not the only reason they take an antidepressant medication. It's because they're depressed and they want some relief from this terrible disease. And I'll address how medication can be a good treatment option a little bit later in this video. I made a much longer video about the myth of a chemical imbalance earlier this year, but then I decided not to publish it because, honestly, I was too afraid that people would feel blamed, judged, or misunderstood. And I know that for many people with depression, they hate themselves so much that the chemical imbalance explanation has been a really important relief. It helps you not blame yourself or beat yourself up for how you feel. And I didn't want to undermine that without giving you something better, without something to replace it. So I do want to be really clear. Depression is not your fault, and there's something you can do about it. You deserve good information and good treatments. So if you want to watch my longer video, it's unlisted, but the link is in the description. That being said, the chemical imbalance hypothesis was widely promoted by pharmaceutical companies and widely accepted by the public since the early 2000s. Doctors, therapists, news outlets, and many social media channels have widely used this hypothesis to explain what causes depression and to promote the use of antidepressants as a treatment. And to be clear, there are biological contributing factors for depression, which researchers don't completely understand. There are correlations to things like nutrient deficiencies, hypothyroid. Some medications can cause depression. Gender contributes to depression.
Really?
Substance abuse, a genetic interaction with the environment, and possibly things like food allergies and inflammation and toxins.
Really?
Brain injuries, infections, and your gut microbiome, right? There are also physical changes in the brain, guts, and bodies of people with depression.
Because that is somebody with like no
There is
previous
no single cause. There is
history
no
of
physical
trauma of any
We're
kind.
much better
Her family doesn't have any kind of history
and
of
environmental causes of depression. Things like
depression.
abuse, trauma, and stress, and social isolation, the loss of a loved one. These are all more easily identifiable causes than any physiological.
Sometimes, apparently,
Researchers with
like
this study found a much closer correlation between stress and depression than serotonin and depression. Now, all of that being said, I was speaking to someone this morning, and she basically said, well, then why the hell am I taking medication? Medication is still an effective treatment for many people. When compared to a placebo, it helps about 20% more people reduce their depression symptoms. Medication is also generally cheaper and easier to access than other treatments. And easy accessibility really matters with a disease like depression that saps your energy and your motivation. Researchers aren't sure why SSRIs work, but one hypothesis.
I was diagnosed within 25 minutes with bipolar, acute mania, suicidal tendencies.
That they explore their medication.
There was a few other really good ones that I was like, oh, really?
Medication is not the
all this,
and it's not as effective as
and this was fucking from taking a test with one of the questions included how often during the week do you have permanent markers?
Therapy, exercise,
or glue.
Nutritious diet,
I was like,
good
what
sleep,
is
and reducing stress usually get better results in the long term than only medication.
I was told.
And they can be used in conjunction with medication. You can do
we don't
both.
typically
Depression
diagnose
is
people with
a mental
borderline.
disease. It has a combination of biological,
And I said because there's no prescription for it.
Psychological, and environmental causes. So that includes trauma, stress, and abuse, and social issues, right? And depression is not your fault. No one wants to be depressed. No one just goes out and chooses one day, you know what I want?
Oh yeah, no, like I definitely chose to have a panic
Blaming
disorder.
yourself, beating yourself up, believing that
It's
really something is wrong with you because you have depression is not the most helpful approach. But neither is the single-minded, most likely incorrect belief that depression is simply caused by a chemical imbalance, and the corresponding belief that your only option is to take medication. So both of these beliefs, the one
also
side
like
that
cognitive
that
therapy
bad
that I
medical
don't have doctors for that.
or that brain chemistry is causing my depression and there's nothing I can do about it. Both of these are too rigid and extreme ways of thinking that can essentially impair your ability to change the things that you can change to improve your depression. They make you more helpless. Depression is not your fault, but there are some things you can do about it. So if we want to treat depression, we need a much more flexible and informed way of thinking about depression and mental health in general. There is actually so much you can do to improve your mental health and to treat and resolve depression and anxiety. There are research-backed treatments that are shown to be as effective or more effective than medication. And again, there's nothing wrong with medication. It's a fine treatment option when you understand the pros and cons. When we're dealing with a disease that is so impacted by how we think about it, as a society and as mental health professionals, we have to create a dialogue that empowers people. We can't reduce stigma by just teaching people that there's nothing they can do except take meds. Now, I also have an entire course on the mind and body treatments that have been shown to fight depression more effectively than medication. So if you'd like to learn more about that, just check out the link in the description. There really are so many options for treating depression. Now, I hope that the publicity that this study is getting helps us improve the conversation around depression and mental health, that it helps people get actually informed about what the research says about depression and not just the information that the pharmaceutical commercials taught us 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I hope this improves our dialogue so that we can actually help people get feeling better and get better as people. So thank you so much for watching.
Oh, fuck my stuff. I haven't pencil rolled since I was like 2. My mom said it away. She tried to kill me with plastic.
You know the drill. You just finished work. Time to indulge a little.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this all day, so I cancel my plans. Because tonight is just about Hugo and Francesca. My binge? Watching season 4 of my favorite backup romance. Again.
Don't leave her, Hugo. She didn't mean it.
What is this?
Are you ready for the 2,300 times you need to change the litter in a cat's life? The many, many baths, a ton of fur, but lots of love and happiness. Then Duo will always have your back.
There are tons of videos out there teaching tips and tricks and RAWR motivation. But in this video, I'm going to teach you how your brain works so you can understand the principle behind how to get motivated and how to stay motivated. You're going to learn how dopamine, the neurotransmitter of reward and pleasure and motivation, works in your brain, and 4 simple things that you can do to get motivated and stay motivated.
I'm bad for a roll joint. There's some right for that. Fuck song. Sorry. Alright, we're fine. I have no. Sorry. Let her up. That's a dig. Okay. I'm gonna out you. Oh. Ow. Okay. Ow. Oh. Oh, what'd you? There you go. Ow. Oh my god. I want to faint. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. Oh. Oh, fuck yeah. Fuck you, Ken. Oh, shit. Hell. No. You check out. That's a good dick. I'll see what happens with my car. With my car. Okay. We're gonna call Rhea. Because I like talking to Rhea. You know what I realized of all my friends, I'm the only one who doesn't have a criminal record? Just wait till I get my fucking car back. It sucks ass.
Hello?
You answered!
I know I answered. I was sleeping until recently.
I'm so. Did I wake you up? I'm sorry.
No, you didn't wake me up. I woke up like, I don't know, 45 minutes ago.
Where you at?
I'm at Vic's.
Oh, okay. Hi, Vic.
Hi, Madison. Sean says hi and Vic says hi, and you're on speakerphone.
Hi, Sean.
What? What, Vic? Vic says she's really happy you're okay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I very much totaled my vehicle, though. I don't know if she saw a picture of it.
Oh, send me a picture of your car. Yeah, I want to see how
Yeah,
bad
they
it
tore the
looks.
roof off.
Like last night?
Like jaws of life out her car kind of thing.
Where?
Like leaving the
On
hotel.
Notre Dame.
Oh, gosh. That's crazy.
I fell asleep and I apparently just like toppled on Notre Dame in a ditch.
Oh, it was you versus the planet?
Yeah, no, apparently like almost dead.
Yeah, serious.
No, I got like a fucking cool ass cast though out of it.
On what part?
On my arm.
That's
my right arm. It's great. I'm considering cutting it off myself.
What? How long are you supposed to wear that cast?
I don't fucking know. Like till Wednesday.
That's not that bad. It's not even that fucking day is not spelled the way it sounds.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're gonna put a new one on, depending on. I think my ankle took the brunt of it. We didn't really talk about my ankle. It's kind of just like a big like wall now, like my ankle bone.
I even almost had a big wall for an ankle the other day.
That's fucked up, eh? Like it's like my ankle bone's gone. It's cool. So I actually called to inquire about my other vehicle, the one that is not totaled.
Yes, your other vehicle.
Did you by chance get a chance to walk past?
I didn't listen to your voice.
Oh, okay.
Message yesterday because
I'm probably I'm gonna try to get my my mom there to bring me down there, but they didn't retrieve my keys out of my totaled vehicle, so I have to see if my car is yeah, but like I literally the picture that my mom posted, you can see my keys are on the dashboard.
Your keys were on the dashboard?
Yeah, and they're like, we have no idea where your keys went. I'm like, they're on the dashboard of the truck. The picture you posted, you could see the keys are on the dashboard, and like nobody even saw that. I was like, what do you mean you guys didn't see it? It's like the forefront of the picture.
But which car did you crash though? Was it the...
It was the truck, and my sister has
No.
I know, I just got it fixed.
You just fixed your truck.
I know. I spent like a whole morning in a parking lot embarrassing myself only to fix my truck because I'm amazing, and then to total it literally like later on in the week.
Yeah, you fixed it that week.
I know.
Yeah.
It is like a weird sign from somebody saying, "Do not drive that car."
That's horrible.
Isn't it sucks so bad? I was going to clean it actually because there was like bugs in it. Like I don't know if they were bed bugs or if like they were like up north bugs because the last time I used it I brought it up north. Anyway, not the point. The point is that truck was not really even supposed to be on the road. It was in storage. It was registered in storage. But the only key for the other car, there's only one key, and it's on that key ring. So, and I think if I call the tow truck, I think if they start to fuck with it, the alarm's gonna go off, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what'll happen at that point. So I think I have to find a keysmith.
Well, I'm going back out into the world again today. I said I was going to go into the world yesterday.
Okay, and you didn't?
I didn't make it super far.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyways. Yes, Vic says she will come with me to check on your car.
But Vic, do you know what street I'm talking about?
Okay, so what street?
Okay, it's do you know the laundromat?
The laundromat? Which one?
Okay, there's the one on Notre Dame where you
Notre
pass the
Dame
two
one?
taco places.
The Asian laundromat.
Yeah, definitely that one.
Okay.
So like there's a little circle road that like if you're like literally standing outside of that place, there's like a little circle road. It goes like behind.
Oh, is it near Restore?
I have no. Yeah, I think so.
Like near the other burrito place that's near Diano.
It's literally down the street.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's like a little circle street, but there was a very nice like hippie looking fellow who was like he lived on the second floor of like the second building there. There's only like 3 buildings, I think, but he was like really genuinely concerned. I left him a necklace, like a sun necklace, because he was just like, I saw that, like, do you need help with anything? I was like, nah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of like loitering outside of your home. I just like am transferring all my stuff from one car to the other because I live in my car.
Yeah.
And he was really cool about it. And he was like, "Hey, well, I'm gonna be up for like another half an hour." Like, and his girlfriend too was there. I was like, "Hello, not trying to poach on your man. I am just literally a hobo who's stuck outside of your building." And they were really cool about it. So I don't know. I doubt that anybody would like call to get it towed, but I don't know what the parking situation on that street is. I'm assuming not great.
Well, we actually are leaving today, so and that's not far actually at all. That's like a 7-minute walk.
I had it parked at the corner. The battery's probably gonna be dead though, but I don't know if even if it's unlocked or not. Like I can't remember. I'm assuming I locked the doors. I doubt there's anything in it though. I'm pretty sure I emptied the whole thing.
Okay, so it's the small car.
Yeah, it's the fucking Malibu.
Yeah.
But it's got the doodle on the front, so you'll be able to see it. It was like right on the corner.
Yeah, the Triforce.
Yeah, but it was like right on the corner of that street.
Okay, I can definitely.
Okay,
we'll
if you just like hit me up if you see it or not.
I know what the car looks like.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ria. I appreciate it, bro.
No problem. And I'll send you a photo.
I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna send you a photo of my wrecked car.
Yeah, send me a photo. You know what? The situation is so much better than it was originally described to us.
People are saying like I was in a coma. My dog had died.
It was like she's in the ICU for a month.
Stop my plan.
And she's also
I will
in the
go on.
Douglas. And
sorry, what? Ria? Sorry, say again.
It was like this whole thing, like where you're like in the ICU for a month, and you're also in the Douglas, and you're also losing your license, and you also might have killed someone.
And what are you talking about? I tried to kill someone.
You might have hit someone and like injured someone.
I hit someone. That was fucking. I thought shaggy gossip spread fast. Holy shit! Turns out fatal gossip spreads faster. That's nuts.
But.
Oh my god! I should totally roll with I killed someone. Like that sounds so much cooler. I'm in the Gazette apparently. They got my age wrong though. They said I was 27.
No, do you have a broken knee?
No, I have a broken ankle and a broken arm.
Broken ankle and broken arm.
But like the X-ray, I had a catheter and everything, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
didn't your hip get like displaced though?
Yes, my hip was absolutely dislocated severely, and that's kind of when I woke up.
Yeah, you woke up when they were popping your hip back in.
Yeah, how did you know?
I was on the phone with you yesterday.
See, I think I have memory loss though. I think I fucking hit my head. I have a broken nose. My mom knows now. I hate it. I'm gonna see if insurance is gonna cover my nose job because I can't live like this. I have a cute little button nose. I can't handle a broken nose.
From what I saw from your live, well, it's bad quality though, the live stream, so like I can't really
That's
tell.
what people tell me. Like, and I don't know how to get this fucking quality better. Because my computer is like a $3,000 device. So.
Yeah, it was better. Like if you're using your computer, I think it was like your phone was better quality.
Yeah, well, the phone's gone. Like,
Mm.
which I thought was so weird.
Yeah.
Because like,
yeah, you need a microphone for your live streams so that people can hear you. Because usually it's like, you know, kind of like muffled.
I just like I was switching my SIM card from my computer to my phone.
Mm.
Like right beforehand. I think it's because my phone died. And like I put my SIM card from my phone into the computer because the back of like my computer doesn't have any holes or plugs or anything. The only thing it does have is like this little needle hole that that punch out, and it's for a SIM card and an SD card, basically. And it's because it's technically a tablet. Anyway, like I don't know what I was doing like right before that. I think I remember I slept in the parking lot till like 3 a.m. though.
Yeah, like right before, like I was on the street and I remember I saw you and you were like, "Oh, you're heading back." I said yes, but then I didn't go to meet you.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, and then the next thing I know is like, "Oh, Madison is all this stuff happened," and I'm like, "Oh my god, I was supposed to go meet her," and then.
I just remember being in like my car broke down, and I was like, "Hey, I'll grab the truck then." And I walked. Did I walk back? No, Ezra gave me a lift over to my truck in Verdun. And I drove my truck back to Fatale, where I was going to leave it parked until I can like clean it out because it had like weird bugs in it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You definitely just nodded the fuck out, like fell asleep.
The last thing I remember is being in the parking lot talking to Brad.
Yeah, you told me that. You remember talking to Brad.
Because Brad's been trying to get me to tell Brad I'm still down to play that fucking Wii U game.
Oh, he wants you to play Wii U, okay.
Because he was like, I don't know how the fuck to set it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, don't you live with like two other guys? Like, no one can. Anyway.
But
Shut the fuck up, Sean.
The motion picture. Brad, the motion picture. That'd be a good book. That'd be a good book. I'll let you go, Mad.
Yeah, definitely just hit me up later, okay?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, thanks, Rhea. Bye.
No problem. Bye.
You are very good at not hitting that bin. Look at you, tough guy. Who's a Master Parker? What? Who's a Master Parker?
I know, right? I was saying that to Alan when I told I was gonna park there, but I like the challenge of not hitting the recycling bin.
That's what I do in my neighborhood, where I'll just like, if I'm like doing bad parking and one of my neighbors are like staring me down while I do it. Hi, Char. Sometimes my neighbors will just like watch me badly park and I'll be like, I'm sorry, I'm a woman. No thanks.
But they're really good.
Nothing.
They're really awesome good?
Yep.
Is that where that went?
6 o'clock chiropractor appointment. Can't wait. So stiff. Look it out. You want to go inside?
And do you want to play this with me?
I can't. I only have one arm.
Oh, yeah, right.
Till like at least tomorrow? Isn't it Monday?
Auntie,
Honestly, I'd take it off right now.
I'm gonna leave that open. If you get hungry, you can taste one of these.
Thank you, Charlie.
Because
You grabbed your Sue's? Yeah. Why don't you eat them?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay, thanks. You wanted to go swimming?
Mm.
You going this way? Okay.
She napped. Hopefully, maybe she'll be less grumpy now. She just like crushed all the plant. What is that thing from Rugrats? The dinosaur?
Reptar.
Reptar!
I am Reptar. Hear me roar.
Yeah, look at you.
Go downstairs.
Mama.
You want to see Grandma? Okay. I'll go up with you. You can go see Grandma. Back up, Jack. Back up. Yeah. Grandma. Grandma's inside.
Oh, maybe I have my monitor. RAWR. Ow. How was that? Why do you keep rolling with the... So apparently the new gossip is I literally killed somebody. Isn't that hilarious? They're gonna roll with that. Oh god. Hi, Jack. Go, Mom. No. Goddamn. This is a bad picture. You gotta take bad pictures. Looks more dramatic. There. Yeah. Send. Ah. At 4:30 for another hour. Wow, that was bad. Okay. I need to get my car back. Yeah. I've actually gotten a few compliments on my hat recently. Okay, fuck you. There's no soda bunny tin. She's talking about Elsa and Bernard. That's where they went. In the Heights. No two houses. No two in a row alike. Our section, their streets are alike. Ooh, what's that? Topic. Got home and I had a nice long bath. Leslie gave Jill tickets to a hockey game at the Forum. Forgot that they actually did games there. Hopefully enjoy. I watched a sitcom. Oh, I watched sitcoms on TV and the news before going to bed. The whole world is topsy-turvy. One wonders and prays that all will work through to a better life for the majority. In the meantime, nothing is as it was. Children coming for dinner tomorrow? Weeks just fly. Sunday already. Colder today. Hard to believe how mild it has been. Went to church. Good sermon on a Christian something in making choices. Growing and making choices. Went downstairs for coffee, didn't stay long. After lunch, Cha, which is my grandfather, and I went for a walk. Had to turn back at Colonia Street. It was too windy. Children came. Greg did the ribs on the barbecue. With Chuck's help, they were quite good. Early for us to barbecue. Sarah was so cute as usual. Pooped out and slept at 7 p.m. Joe left at 6:30. The choir is singing in Huntington. Greg will have to battle Sarah to get her to bed. Jill stayed till 8. She looks well, but like me, she has to rest. February 12th. Sunny and cold today. Man, shit's changed, eh? It's been a while, but see, okay. We went for a walk after lunch. Chuck was busy with YUL. YUL to me is the airport. My grandfather worked for CN. It's a train company. In the morning, I did a wash and vacuumed. Each IH room? Oh, L.L room? I'm annoyed with Chuck today. He gets too wound up with YUL and doesn't answer me properly. But as it shut up. I have like super shiny silver pants, by the way. They're very sparkling. He gets too wound up with the YUL and doesn't answer me properly, but as it is his habit, when I complain, he reverses it. He has gone to a good cupboard meeting tonight. Makes me so mad. Janet called tonight. She found Mom well. She has had something. Flu, but much better now. Mom liked the t-shirt I sent very much. Hope it fits her. She didn't say There's Georgie. One. I get to break the room. Hope it fits her. I had a very good visit. Went to church with her. And Steinman? Oh. Sermon was given by the day minister. Chuck came home on time for news. South Africa is RIT. Mandela being freed after 27 and a half years of jail. He's SA, very excited. Hopefully all will go smoothly. February 13th. Need muffins. Who's Angelique? Why do I have a feeling I'm in for it? They're so good.